And we're doing this shit again. I realized that I start off all these shit shooting Sundays with that fucking phrase, and it wasn't even intentionally like a phrase, but I guess like fucking this is my let's just jump into it for Philip DeFranco. It's let's do this shit again. Fucking anyway, housekeeping out of the way. We are doing an episode on prepping, and the last episode was on digital prepping to make sure that your footprint was not only secure in the present, but secure post-collapse, and that you could use your devices for a prep situation in a post-collapse scenario without having like the entire device just be useful for essentially the state monitoring you. But with that out of the way, this is brought to you by well, actually, I guess I should have finished that out. Today's the physical prepping end of it, and we'll also be going into the psychological end of prepping as well, because the mind is part of the body, and if they're not connected, you're going to be fucked anyway. You won't be able to do anything if you're paralyzed with doubt and fear and shit. But beyond all that, this is brought to you by Brave, the ad-resistant, Trek-resistant browsing experience. It's also brought to you by Cash App, the dollar and Bitcoin wallet that you can use with a Visa card. It's also brought to you by Liberty mugs that you can use to piss off your coworkers. There are also many other ways to support us in the me in the description. And also the housekeeping. We're doing a morning news show called Bad Morning News, and depending on whether or not I can get my shit in gear, it's going to be a completely updated setup with its own channel tomorrow. Possibly it'll switch over at some point during the week. And it'll be a much more spiffy setup run through an Nginx server and a bunch of other things that are fairly technical that I don't think anybody here is interested in. But beyond all of that, I hope that people come to Bad Morning News. It's every morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, except Mondays. That's 12 for the next few weeks, but it'll even out eventually. It's at that time every morning on this channel, or whichever channel we switch it to, which will probably be relatively soon. Anyway, with that out of the way, all the housekeeping fucking settled. Everybody introduce yourself and tell people who you are, essentially where you can be found, and what you do.
All right, I'll go
Anybody
first.
can start. All right, yeah, I was going to say that. Anybody can start. We do this in random order since it's a free-form show.
This is Finian, of course. I am mainly on Steemit these days. I've been convinced to get accounts over on MeWe and Minds also, same name. And I'm on Twitter as my business account under Liberty Pro PI. And I do private investigative and residential security consulting work.
I guess I'll go next. This is Mance Raider, host of the Freeman Beyond the Wall podcast. Wrote a couple books. They're available on Amazon. Search Mance Raider. Also on my website, you can buy them for cryptocurrency. freemanbeyondthewall.com/store. And that's about it.
You go next, Skip.
This is Skip at Collapsitarian1 and also at the Free Rifleman. I work within the military industry, and so I work and do independent contract work. And this happens to be a particular subject that is of high interest to me, so I'm really glad that I can be here.
Lupinate. You can find me on Minds and Discord as Lupinate, or on Steemit as Anarchic Wolf. I usually write about reality, reason, voluntarism, and try and be the counterpoint to these guys by being a fairly positive force, but I'm going to be full disclosure today. You ain't going to get that from me, people. I've had a bit of a loss this week, so I'm going to be focusing today on talking about how to mentally prepare yourself for exactly that, because you're going to need to.
All right. And if you'd like, you can start by discussing that loss. But if you would not like, then we can just get straight into it and get everybody's general ethos on this.
Yeah, I'm an open book. I had to put one of my pets down yesterday, unfortunately. Suffering from lymphoma, and it had gotten too far gone, and we didn't want him to actually start properly suffering. So couldn't walk, had gone lame, basically, and it was time. And even though it was the right choice, it's one that I did not want to make, and you can expect that kind of crap to happen when everything has gone to shit. And I'm telling you guys now, I am a very angry man today. I've gotten through the other 4 stages of loss practically, except for acceptance. So I kind of accept it, but it doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. So I'm dealing with that in my own time.
Man, I hear you. I probably some of the hardest loss for me has been pets, and you can hear one meowing in the background right now.
Yeah.
And the I mean, literally, I hate to say this, but I've taken the loss of pets harder than I've taken the loss of people in my life, only because I spend more time with them than I do with most people in my life. So, and I understand. I hear where you're coming from.
No, they're the closest thing we're probably going to have to kids anyway, so it's a bit like losing one of your own at the moment. But I get why people suffer so when they do lose a pet very deeply. And it's not the first one we've lost, but it's the first one I've had to put down. And it's not an experience I'd wish on anybody, but it's one that if you own them, you eventually have to make that decision or not and watch them suffer.
Yeah, well, I do hope that gets that your mental state improves, because
It will.
It's certainly not easy, and I've had to go through that multiple times before. So,
dude, I survived a fire, for fuck's sake. I can survive losing a pet ferret, even if it does break my heart to see him go.
Yeah. Well, but, with that,
like I said,
go ahead.
Mental prepping. That's an important part of this. You've got to be prepared, and you've got to expect the 5 stages of loss. You've got to work through them, and if you're going to fix yourself, if you're going to get things sorted for yourself quickly, you've got to work through them quickly. You've got to get past the denial. You've got to get past the bartering phases as fast as you can, and try and get over the anger as quickly as you can as well. It's hard.
Yeah.
That's the hardest one, I think, for most people. And that's what's going to really, shall we say, separate the metal from the meat.
If I may, Lupinate, I would also like to extend my condolences. I was a man who did not like cats. And Bill Bupert at ZeroGov on Twitter is a big cat fan because, let's face it, cats are nature's proper anarchist. I think Ernest Hemingway, I think, said something along those lines.
I consider them their only proper tyrant, but go on.
Yeah. And when I moved into my new house, there had been a cat that had lived here, was born here. And when the previous people left, they left the cat. And they left it with a neighbor, but it was an outside cat. And they had, little kids, and they couldn't really have an outside cat inside that was a little foreign to small little kids that like to grab a hold of cats in a way that cats don't like to be grabbed.
I know what you mean.
And so this became an outside cat. So we came and, it's in the proximity of the neighborhood of where I had already lived. And so we used to walk through here and see, the neighborhood. I like to walk around and get an idea. We were walking our dog, and we come across this cat, and I'm like, man, I wonder whose cat this is. Well, then we ended up taking a look at this house, and we got the idea that we liked it, and we moved in. And we didn't realize along the way that the cat came with the house, because the cat originated here.
Mm.
And
I didn't know it was the cat's house.
Yeah. I mean, we were moving
Still
into
is
the cat's house. Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
His property, not yours.
That's right. And so this was the coolest cat. I have to tell you, I never really liked cat behavior. I was always a dog person prior to this.
Mm.
And that's all I've had is dogs, aside from, cats in the barn, which is where they belonged. And growing up. And
Yeah.
So this cat, surprisingly enough, over the course of a year, won my heart. And when I say like that, I mean that cat, because I'm working in my garage all the time, cat would walk up, hey, what's up? Jump up onto whatever it was I was working on. And of course, over time, just really changed my outlook on cats. Completely. I have no idea. It was like a missionary for cats. And completely like changed my whole outlook on cats and how much I like them now, as opposed to before I didn't like them. I never really had a good positive experience with a cat. And I know that that's not unusual for people, because cats are anarchists and they're assholes,
Yeah.
But they can be your asshole. And I think that's something that just kind of, they win you, and then they become like a part of you. And so, of course, naturally, somebody, probably aimed for this cat, because this was one of those cats that would walk around the neighborhood and kind of make its rounds and say hello to everybody. And people would walk down the sidewalk and the cat would come out like, hey, what's going on? You walking through my neighborhood? Say hello. And so this cat would actually, walk up to people that it didn't even know, which is unusual for a cat, because most cats just run off.
Sure.
And it kind of would do the whole dart across the street. It knew what time everybody would be getting home, so it would go from house to house to house. Hey, what's up? How you doing? And so at some point, it was about a little over a year ago, or no, maybe a little bit more than a year ago. It's like 2 years ago. I heard something outside that just didn't sound right. And I was getting ready to meet my family for dinner, and I ran out there and I jump in my Land Cruiser and I get ready to leave and turn the headlights on, and I see a white clump of fur along the edge of the road. And I'm like, oh shit. So I go out there, and of course, she was dead. Yeah. And it really upset me, honestly. It took me a long time to be able to just tell this story without breaking up. And I think the whole reason being, because, I guess I kind of have a reputation of being a little tough and rough around the edges. But at the end of the day, this cat really had won me over. And I was amazed, really, really amazed at what kind of impact this cat had on my life. And how much it had changed my outlook. And I thought, you know what? That cat was there for a reason. And if nothing else, it was just to make me a better person, so that I wasn't an asshole to cats. And of course, that's why, maybe. But that's why, I like cats now. I still would never have one declawed. That's just me personally. I just think it's kind of rude to cut the tips of people's fingers off. And it's kind of rude to cut the tips of pets' fingers off. Same way with clipping ears and all that kind of stuff. It's just not really my thing. And so AKC can bite me. But yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. And so sorry to hear that.
It's not your fault, mate. It's a tragedy. It's one of those things. I mean, I have to say Jordan Peterson does help people get to grips with concepts, as it were, because one of his phrases was along the lines of earthquakes aren't evil, death isn't evil, cancer isn't evil. They're tragedies. There's a difference between tragedy and evil, and it's hard to make the distinction sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important to. And I know sorry. I mean, the whole story about the cat, because my wife's not a cat person either. She's never really been into them. I had one when I was younger. I like all animals, to be quite frank. I'm a fairly animal friendly person. And my wife had when we went to start viewing the ferrets that we picked up, this Tonkinese that was in the rescue that we went to. It seemed to like to jump on people's shoulders and just sit there.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind it doing it to me, but she really didn't like it.
Yeah, some people don't like that.
And she was holding this little polecat ferret named Nell.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically looked at my wife, looked at the cat, and then bit the cat's eyebrow and wouldn't let go. It would not let go at all. And it took the cat didn't care. The cat did not give a damn.
Yeah.
And it didn't make a move. It just sort of sat there, and the woman had to take the cat off my wife's shoulder anyway. And then as soon as it did, Nell let go, and then she gave Nell back to my wife, and it gave her, just sort of went up to her and went, took, and that was it. We had to get her, and along with her came two more, because you couldn't just have one. Basically, you had to have you couldn't separate them.
Yeah, they gotta have playmates.
They gotta have playmates.
Yeah.
Now might be a good time, before you guys keep getting all warm and fuzzy about pets. Since I was told to come on the show and we were going to be talking about prepping for the apocalypse, you may not like the direction your pets are going to go in that scenario. So I apologize in advance if I offend anyone, but cats are very
No,
it's true. He's right.
It's true. It's true.
He's right. And
dreadful algebra.
Just a quick +1 on Jordan Peterson's book, and I enjoy a lot of his speeches, and he's actually had quite an impact on my daughter, which, of course, every father would be happy to hear that. But what I will tell you is that, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, they're not evil, but collectivists are.
Oh, yes, 100%. They are the plague that, unfortunately, is part of mankind.
And I believe that they are the reason that there is a need to prep.
They are, unfortunately, because they will come around.
Think about it. If individualists we're the preppers, right? So here's the thing: if collectivists if it weren't for collectivists, we wouldn't have to prep, because if they weren't, if they prepared for their own issues, they wouldn't be collectivists. It's kind of a catch-22. One connects to the other.
Yeah.
Well, I
self-fulfilling prophecy.
I wouldn't say that that's very fair, because the point of collectivism is that you don't have to be on your own, and that if you have a unit, that unit can better survive if that unit is unit-focused rather than individual-focused. Now, I don't agree with
a sacrifice of self in preference to the greater whole.
I don't agree with that, but that doesn't mean that's not what they think, and that doesn't mean that that's not trying to deal with problems. And to be completely straight, the collectivists aren't just, for instance, communists and leftists and whatever. They're also the colonialists, the xenophobes, and the jingoists and the neocons who make their living based on spreading essentially by force right-wing ideology across the planet. So, I mean, there is the idea that, these people could prepare for situations better and more ethically, but to say that they don't, while we pretty much, I think, all live in first world countries created by people who prepared for plenty of these sorts of things, seems a little disingenuous.
I'm not going to say that they don't prepare. I'm just going to say that the solutions are fucking shite.
Well,
Agreed.
What it is understand that they have no qualms in taking your shit. That's what collectivism is about. And so that's exactly why that needs to be a part of your prepping plan.
Oh, yeah. is to defend your house. So to get into the actual meat of the show, since we're here now, what is everybody's prepping ethos? What are your primary concerns? Give me like 5 points to proper prepping, and if anybody has anything to say about any of those points, we'll jump off of those points.
Sure, I'll go first. I'm Conan, son of Conan, shitlord extraordinaire. When I'm not hurting people's feelings on Twitter, I tend to try to help people find ways to minimize their status footprint and help people reduce their dependence upon state systems since they monopolize so many things. So, yeah, I'll go first. The 5 Ps of prepping. Pretty pink, perky, puffy. Oh, well, I'm sorry. No, that was a different 5 Ps. No, the 5 Ps are proper preparation prevents poor performance. And that's the most important thing, is that some things cannot be foreseen. Some shit's going to happen that you just can't prepare for. But there's a lot of things that are going to be inevitable, like people trying to take your stuff because they don't have stuff of their own. And they're not automatically evil. Some of them are, but some of them are simply desperate. You have to be prepared for those things. That's an example. Yeah, it's all about planning ahead for as much as you can foresee. And then that which you can't foresee, that's where training and things of that nature. So yeah, the 5 Ps, proper preparation prevents poor performance. Applies in a lot of places, especially in prepping.
Yeah, and Negan kind of falls in that same area where, he doesn't need to prep. He just makes other people do it for him.
Oh, that's when I stopped watching that show, though, because that dude would never live very long. Sorry. That scenario wouldn't work.
He is the definition of a collectivist.
Yep. And an opportunist.
Yes. He sees an opportunity that benefits him, and then he uses his collective to benefit him. Basically, there's no other way around it. This is what you get with any kind of mentality that basically says the group is more important than the person.
Yeah, but that's the irony here, is that he's more on sort of a God Emperor trip from what I see with Negan. And you also have to keep in mind, people like that, they all have one thing in common. Obviously, there's other things in common, brutality and things of that nature. But the one thing they all have in common, and they did such a good job on the show of representing this with Negan. I really compliment him on the actor they selected in the script. But he's very charismatic. Like when you watch that show and he's like, hot diggity dog, Lucille's going to drink tonight. You can't help but be like, I can't wait to see your head on a pike, but I kind of like you a little bit, And every dictator that you see has that ability, that natural charismatic energy for people. And they also have the desire to lift a burden off of people. Because you'll notice Negan could be very brutal, but he could also be extremely generous. Give you things that there's no way you could have that in the world on your own. No way. Only through Negan's good graces could you get those. So that's why I like that show so much. It is a beautiful metaphor for collectivism, as well as for the type of people who have a lust for power and control over others.
There's a name for those type of people, the ones who are extremely charismatic and make you feel like you're the most important person on earth sometimes, and at other times can make you feel like a total piece of shit. And that name is psychopath. They are in very powerful positions usually, and this is why, again, another reason why you need to be prepared for the worst.
Well, right, and also on that scale, there's a very specific thing here, which is Machiavellianism, where you're willing to basically throw anybody under the bus necessary, which, by the way, Machiavelli would hate that name, but, to the side of that, where Machiavelli was making the opposite point that people want him to have been making, to the side of that, when you're able to throw anybody under the bus, when everything is business, when everything is moving forward, instead of, caring about the people along the way, when you do not give a shit about other people's rights or your responsibilities to them because you don't think you have any responsibilities to them, you become the kind of person that will be feared and hated and at the same time very powerful.
I agree, and I think that your point could also be applied to Nietzsche. I think a lot of people took what he was trying to say and inferred from it almost the opposite.
And and that's a fun thing because I've read plenty of Nietzsche and Nietzsche. And fucking when I tell people like in a conversation with nihilists present that Nietzsche didn't mean that sort of thing, it's often a very good response from people who are like, yes, finally somebody gets it. Like Idiot's Query, who used to attend these chats, he's a nihilist and he actually read Nietzsche. And he always gets very refreshed when I start talking about this sort of thing. Idiot's Query is on Twitter, by the way. We've got a few more people in the conversation now. So why don't you all introduce yourself? Tell us what you do, where you can be found, and generally what your what 5 main points are for your ethos involving prepping.
Dude, I was out of it for a second there. Sorry about that. Okay, now, could you catch me up, like, when you guys talk about prepping?
We're talking about physical prepping this week. So, like, anything that involves enriching your surroundings, your environment, your mind, your body, anything, how to, properly do physical things involving prepping, whatever that may be.
I couldn't give you 5 points right now because I think I'd actually have to like really think on that for a while.
Well, just give us 1 point then. One thing that you think is important after you're done introducing yourself, letting us know where you can be found and what you do, and then after your 1 point, we'll move on to the other people here who are also new to the call, which are Paleo and Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I'm from Sarcasm and Liberty. My name's Josh, but everybody can just call me Sarcasm. Most people tend to. And then we can be found on Twitter at sarcasm_liberty. You can also go to sarcasmandliberty.com. And then we have Sarcasm and Liberty on Facebook. And we do a lot of memes and articles and different things, just discussing libertarian ideas with, a sarcastic slant. So it's more fun that way for us. All right. You know what? Give me go to Tim, and then let me think on that for a second on the question you passed on to me.
Gotcha. So what you got, Tim?
Hello, everybody. I'm Tim. Find me on Twitter as the Paleo Libertarian. The points for prepping, I would suggest 1, go paleo, because that's all about, getting back to eating natural foods. And if your body's accustomed to eating sugar and crap, and when the shit hits the fan, if you're not able to get those things, you're going to go through withdrawals anyway. So you must go through withdrawals for it now and start eating things that are natural, so that way you're ready to be able to do these things yourself.
Okay, and just to really quick clarify, by natural, you mean like, something that you could grow or feed from meat or other resources. Because a lot of people don't know what that is. Like, so basically, you just mean not processed industrially, something that you can make yourself.
Exactly. The paleo philosophy behind the
Oh, also you keep cutting out. I don't know what that is. Maybe you got too many windows open, but you keep cutting out. So just want to let you know that.
It's my internet connection. It's, net neutrality is kicked in.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Yay.
well then continue.
So, all right. So yeah, hopefully I won't cut out again. Basically, the paleo philosophy of our lifestyle is to eat the type of food that was available to our ancestors. Which is no processed foods, grass-fed meats, wild-caught fish. There's no grains, because the paleo philosophy is pre-farming, so no grains in the diet, no dairy, just basically the more natural the better. And along with that, I would recommend that everyone be able to grow their own food, or at least know how to do that.
You broke up again.
Just pick up a book or if you even know that if a 4-H club exists around you, get in touch with them and learn how to just at the very least get a tomato plant and stick it into a container, and you can grow a potted tomato plant if that's what you need to do.
So because you keep cutting out, I do want to like see if I can summarize this. Basically, get seeds, learn how to plant things, learn how to work like without the system, not within it, so that you can like effectively garden anywhere, learn what that does, and try to group with other people who do similar things, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And in addition to that, if you can,
if you cut out right after you said if you can,
and I like to eat what I catch. I do a lot of catch and release because I fish for fun as well. But go catch your food. Actually, see where your food comes.
All right. Well, you keep cutting,
and it makes a bigger impact on the meal.
You keep cutting out a lot, but I think what you just said was something similar to hunt for your food, learn to catch things, go fishing, and things like that, so that like on your own time, so that you can know how to do it once the collapse happens. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, hunt and fish. Learn how to fish. Learn how to hunt. Fishing is, of the two, fishing is probably the easiest.
Yeah, fishing's easy.
Well, yeah, for the most.
Have the gear to do it in advance, though. Don't wait until you have to fish. Learn it now and have the gear now.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. All right, so let's move on to somebody else. Let's get their five.
Can I do
if you don't
follow up?
Okay.
Oh, sarcasm. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, just real quick. But I think Finian, were you wanting to follow up on something Tim said?
Super quick, yeah.
Go ahead, man.
It's directly related to paleo.
Yeah, I didn't want to like jump in with my thing if you had a follow up to him. So go ahead.
Mine will be fast. So he's talking about paleo. The way to look at this, since this is the topic of the show tonight, imagine if your grocery store didn't have anything. How are you going to eat and live? So that's the kind of stuff you should be preparing for in advance. So like he was saying, fishing, hunting, the typical hunter-gatherer thing that our ancestors used to do. You should be looking at those types of things for your food sources, because more than likely, that's what's going to happen. I mean, the Great Depression, which was very minor compared to what I think is coming, people actually worked for potatoes. So they would do labor on a daily basis just to be paid in food, because there were no grocery stores, and there was no money, and everybody was broke. So it's just something to think about.
That's actually a good point. Like, imagine, if you weren't going to get your food from the grocery store. That's a pretty excellent point, I would say. Something from what kind of like some of the stuff Tim was saying made me think of, like for me, when I was in the Army, I had to do combat lifesaver courses, which for anybody who doesn't know, and I was the only one for my freaking team for like the longest time. But for anybody who doesn't know, that's basically like a step between first aid and an actual full-blown medic. You can you're able to, give IVs and administer like atropine and stuff like that. But you can't perform any complex procedures and stuff. But ever since then, I learned a lot about first aid and being able to treat things. And for me, when I take medications, I always looking into what the effects are going to be, what the side effects are going to be. And I'm, looking into anything just even, I guess, natural type stuff too. And something I think a lot of people, if they didn't have access to the internet, had a first aid situation, they would just have no idea what to do. We've seen people just, talk to somebody who works in an ER, and people will show up for the stupidest little things because they just don't know what to do. They don't know how to treat minor injuries and stuff like that.
And just a quick point on that. Mm-hmm. That's my primary ethos regarding prepping is don't just prep with physical objects. Physical objects are useless trinkets if you don't know how to use them. My primary thing that I'm doing right now, especially since I'm about to move, so I have to downsize my goods. My primary ethos is learning as many skills as possible. I'm absorbing information from SEAL manuals, from books about how to, from books about how to effectively be a gray man, from books and various little pamphlets on how to effectively start fires, build bombs, make poisons, trap animals, kill things, and blow things up. And that's what you have to be good at, especially since this isn't going to be prepping in the form of just being dropped into the middle of a post-collapse movie.
Yeah.
This is going to be prepping in the form of a post-industrial civilization. And if you're not good with salvaging the scraps, if you're not a scavenger, you're going to be fucked. So learn skills. Be strong in your mind. So and that's like the paleo gardening, the hunting, the fishing, the learning how to mend your own wounds. All of these things go into that thing of like mentally being tough enough to know how to do these things.
I would say, like, from the point that Finian made of, like, you know, imagine like you weren't getting your food from the grocery store, how are you feeding yourself? I would say, to kind of give a even broader thing to follow up what Jeremiah said, is imagine you were having to do certain tasks on your own and you can't look up on the internet how to do them. You know, you can't go to Google and figure out like, oh, this is how I do this, or this is how I build this, or this is how this is done. You know, what are you going to do in that situation? You know, like, have books, have manuals, learn things, figure these things out for yourself. And then just like, because I can't stay on for, I got about like 15 more minutes and I gotta go. I did want to say, like, for the medical thing, like, here's an example for me. I went home on 2 weeks of leave. On the very first night, I broke my toe. And I didn't know what to do because, you know, I didn't have insurance because I was in the military. I didn't even know if I could go to like a civilian doctor on the other side of the country away from the base and stuff like that. I had no idea what to do. So I took some gauze and I wrapped, you know, I splint my broken toe with the other one, and I just walked around for the next 2 weeks on a broken toe. And then when I got back, they were like, well, you go see the doctor about it. And he looked at it and he was like, what did you do? I was like, well, this is exactly what I did. He was like, okay. He's like, if you would have went to the hospital, they wouldn't have had you do anything different. They would have just wrapped your splinted your toe to the next one, and that would have been it. At most, it would have given me crutches. But it was like, yeah, like it, but that's the thing. It's like people don't even like, you know, I know a lot of people, if they would have broken their toe, they would have just been like, well, I need to go to the hospital now, and I just splinted it and saved myself a trip. You know, like if you can figure out how to do some like even just basic things, you can actually, you know, like you need to know that kind of stuff. You need to know how to take care of yourself and your loved ones.
There's lots of modern as well as antiquated ways that you can do this. That's what I was going to say. Since you were on the subject, Jeremiah, I wanted to highly recommend a book to you and to the group. It's called Foxfire. It was written back in the day, back in the 70s, by a group of college kids from Duke and another university, who decided it would be a good idea to, they were just before the internet, they were worried they were going to lose certain parts of the heritage that really contributed to the culture of that part of the country at that time. So they went out into the Apalachicolas to where the people were still living very similarly to the way that the original European settlers and the natives that resided there lived pre-colonization. It's called Foxfire. It's awesome. It's very detailed. I'm talking top to bottom. Teaches you how to make your own moonshine still, the exact formulation process, your best method of fermenting and germination. It's just an absolute top to bottom. It's just a compendium of every kind of knowledge, all the different medicinal roots that you can find in Appalachians, ways to tell what type of soil is going to be rich and which ones are going to be rocky or arid. It just goes on and on. It's like a farmer's almanac written by people who never even learned how to read. I can't stop stressing the value of it there. Pretty much anything that you need, you can build out of the most basic of materials. Another point is, and more material for this, online there are many accessible points for being a scavenger. the best thing you can do, as crazy as it sounds, the best thing you can do if you really want to train yourself, let's say you're just a suburban dude, you've always just, you were the guy that went to school, had the sweetheart, went to college, yada, yada. You don't have any experience down here in the grime and the muck of the streets. The best thing you're going to do, just prep yourself, is to put on some gloves and a respirator mask and take some trash bags and go dumpster diving in your local town. I know it sounds stupid. I know you probably think I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, what this does is it's going to teach you how to take things that people throw away and find uses and resources for it.
And it doesn't sound stupid, especially if you can find dumpsters that don't have locks, and especially if you can find dumpsters that are behind warehouse stores.
Yeah, the whole point, it's not even about you needing that stuff. Go take it, scrap it up, and then go give it to some homeless dude so he can recycle it and get him some food and smokes and a couple of beers. It doesn't matter. The point is you learn, wow, look at what people will throw away. And look at what I can do with it. You need to use that little part of your brain that teaches you how to take stuff that you have to make something you need. And that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. And this dude got hit by a car, but died not too long later. And so, that was a loss. But years ago, I'm over it. But I used to know this guy who would dumpster dive and then build shit out of that was like craftsy, and also some of it that was like usable, and sell it online, and he made his living doing that. I forget what his
metal junk art is a big deal, man. People will pay for that. It's but some of it actually looks really cool though, so it has an interesting aesthetic.
Well,
for the right
and Babyland was a junk punk band that made punk music, industrial style punk music, with junk that they found around their town. So even in terms of morale boosting, Babyland, yeah, they're fucking great. Well, they were. But so there was that part of it, like, and I forget what site he used, but it doesn't really matter post collapse. If you can find things to use them. And as to that, I could also recommend a few things. I would recommend, for really beginner shit, 100 Deadly Skills. I could also recommend, and as stupid as this sounds, a lot of the stuff in here is good information. You just have to be able to parse it. The Anarchist Cookbook, like the original, not Anarchist Cookbook 2000, but the original written by fucking, I think his name was like William Pomeroy or something like that. But the original book, and also I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's something like the Arsonist's Field Manual. I always just open it up by searching it on my PC, and I have it named something different because obviously, but
is it the Field Manual for Radicals? Is that the one you're thinking of? Because I do recall that one, and then I also knew the more modern Anarchist Cookbook too.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's cool stuff. Everything from how to, blow up a person's car with household cleaner, down to how to get free sodas with a $1 single bill and some white Scotch tape. It's pretty funny. You just make a little lattice ladder over the dollar with one tab that sticks out about 6 inches. So the machine takes your dollar. As soon as it registers, you tug on it and it pushes it back out. You get to keep your dollar and get your soda. Yeah, I actually read that in Anarchist Cookbook, and I was like, this is the smallest way to fuck the state ever, but I kind of dig it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to move on to my 5 reasons, if that's all right, Jeremiah.
Yeah, go for it, because that's the primary thing. When people express what their planks are for this sort of thing, it can give us some real meat to bite into. So go for it.
Yeah, and thank you for to everyone else who had something to say while I was typing, because it gave me a few minutes to gather my thoughts. But
real quick, I gotta bounce. So I'm sorry I couldn't stay on for very long. I'm glad I actually got to say something though, and make an appearance. So thanks for having me on, Jeremiah, and it was really good hearing from all you guys. And hopefully I'll be able to come back soon.
Yeah, no problem. Be well. Thanks.
All right. Take care, Sarcasm. All right.
Everybody, check out Sarcasm and Liberty on YouTube and Twitter, and be well. And Paleo's sticking around, so.
And by the way, Paleo actually is on our Sarcasm Liberty live streams quite a bit. So, if you want to hear more from him, you can always check out our streams. So, all right, bye, guys.
As long as the internet connection allows.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you.
Anyway, be well.
All right, so I went ahead and broke mine down into the 5, even though Oh, I take that back. I made it 6. Sorry. So I start with security. I think that security is absolutely paramount because you can't do anything else without some level of security or overwatch or a level of protection for you to be able to do anything else. And that requires, a 24/7, alert. It requires enough trained, rested personnel. There's to maintain accountability of those personnel and equipment. And the reason why I say that is because that's the number one lesson that comes out of Walking Dead. And I know this is terrible to equate survival to Walking Dead, but let's face it, the reason why people refer to the zombie apocalypse is because people look at it as the worst case scenario. I, however, think that there's worse scenarios, which is instead of slow walkers that don't have firearms, imagine they have firearms and they're after your shit.
Well, and that's why it's sort of like Fallout, except the fantasy aspects of it with night. What was fucking? I haven't played it in a really long time, but the fucking ghouls and the fucking claw something. I forget.
Right.
Exactly. Deathclaw. Yeah, I was gonna call them Night Claws or Night Claws, but I knew that wasn't right. That's why I like Fallout, because you're dealing with people and guns and knives and bombs and nukes.
Yeah, because if you think about it, every time that something goes wrong in Walking Dead, and whether they meant to do this or whether they're just following human nature, every time that something goes wrong, you've got people that shouldn't have left where they were supposed to be fucking watching. Then you've got other people that don't coordinate with other people before they leave. It's a wonder that any of those people actually ever made it back together in the show. And in some cases, they don't. But the point is that it's amazing that they actually somehow, by dumb fucking luck, managed to run into each other again, which is ridiculous. So security kind of encompasses a large amount, just because you wanted me to go to 5 and I made 6 anyway. Sustenance is just a real simple breakdown, but you should not just seek to survive. You should seek to thrive. And, of course, that's going to require food, water, and, make your considerations for a 24-hour period all the way up to a year or longer. And that's going to throw in all sorts of long-term food production, whether it's aquaponics or whether it's farming or whether it's, learning how to eat, what's out there that's already available to you. The third one that I have, and I forgive the term, this would never pass in a real, survival community, but I just called it squad as fuck. And the reason why I did that was because it requires a team that's in extremis response force. It's a team of people that you learn to rely on instead of calling the police when something goes wrong in your neighborhood or when you think somebody's breaking into your house. It begins
your
by
neighborhood Chuck Norris, Clint Eastwood guy.
Right. It begins by not needing the government to rescue your ass in a small circumstance,
exactly,
all the way up to a collapse or a zombie apocalypse, as I like to refer to it.
And if I remember correctly, you said that a lot of the people that you associate with like this show. So if any of them are listening, hey, how you doing?
Right.
How you doing?
Yeah. And then the other one is, in order to have that, you've got to be able to train as an individual, which means you as a person have got to be able to pull your weight. You can't just say, well, I got 3 guys on how to shoot, so I'm good. You've got to know how to pull your weight, because what will happen is those guys will run out of ammo and then they'll look to you and you won't be able to cover them or something. And so, you got to be able to train as an individual, and then you got to be able to train and perform as a team. And so that kind of, I put that in as squad as fuck. I forgive the terminology. There's probably somebody out there that's really going to hate on me for that. But
you need way more than 3 people
then I look at system and capability approach to equipment. Okay, and what that means is you've got to have overlapping capabilities. You've got to have a practical knowledge library, which is what some of you were alluding to when you were reading off books, and Foxfire is an awesome book. I've got about a dozen or 24 books that are like in my daily reference library as far as looking shit up and making sure I know how to do something. And that means that you've got to have experience in those. Just because you have a book that says you know how to do something doesn't mean you've actually tried it, which is, the attempt at, learning how to dumpster dive. It's because now all of a sudden you're trying to get in and out of something without other people seeing you, calling the cops, other people trying to take your shit, So, I mean, there's experience that's required here. You want to have built-in redundancies because 2 is 1, 1 is none. And so that is what I mean by that system and capability approach to equipment. It means that, you don't just have, 1 rifle and 1 shotgun and 1 pistol for 8 people. There's a 2 is 1, 1 is none. You got to have overlapping capabilities, and then it kind of tucks in underneath the squad as fuck concept. Survival is an individual skill, but it's also a group skill. The ability to survive in emergency scenarios, and that includes hunting, gathering, bugging in, bugging out, simple things like knowing how to tie your knots, knowing how to cross a river properly without drowning your ass because you've got too much gear on. There's a lot of different things that have got to go in. There's people that don't know how to swim, seriously. And so there's a lot of different things that go into a survival, mindset, just like we were talking earlier about being psychologically prepared for collapse. And one of those things is that, you actually have to be able to improvise if you don't have the right equipment. You've got to be able to reflect on the situation and have a realistic view of what is happening. Don't put yourself in some kind of fantasy world that everything's going to be better. You saw that, I think it was the 2nd season of Walking Dead where, you saw everybody's outlook shattered the second that they realized that, spoiler alert, once they got to the CDC, all shit was gone everywhere. That there was no cure. There were no camps that were taking people in. There was no help. And you saw them. I mean, there were people who actually wanted to die at that point. And that comes from the fact that people have a difficult time in dealing with the reality of the situation that they're confronted with.
Mental preparedness.
That's right. And then the 6th category that I kind of put in there, if I had to summarize everything, and I hate doing it because I think that some of this shit is super deep and you could spend weeks or months just learning it. Strategies of pre-programmed, pre-coordinated communications, movement, counter mobility tactics, techniques, and procedures. That's TTP. You've got to work these scenarios out well ahead of what goes wrong. In short, you've got to have a plan. And that plan includes a primary, an alternate, a contingency, and an emergency. That's called PACE. And so if I had to summarize what we're talking about today, I would say that probably everything that we're going to talk about, and I didn't even touch on, metal, gold, trading value, commerce, being able to trade or barter. I didn't even touch on that. I didn't even include that. But of course, everybody knows that's a crucial part of that. And
I'm going to be going into that in a minute, mate, so you don't need to.
I got next.
I didn't touch into what kind of firearm, because that's going to vary for everyone. I was talking to somebody who lives in upstate New York, and they're under the thumb for all types of tyrannical laws up there, 7 rounds in their magazine kind of bullshit. And so they may be one of those people that says, look, I'm not going to put myself in the hazard having something that will put me in prison. And so I'm going to have to make do. So whatever I would recommend to them, lived in Arizona, is not really going to do them a lot of good because most of what I would recommend is capable of more than 7 rounds. And I wouldn't own anything that only has 7 rounds in it, except for maybe a shotgun. And so, so again, there's an aspect of your your mileage may vary in this, but I would tell you that probably everything that we're going to talk about today will probably fit in those categories.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Your mileage may vary is the best way to put that. I'm glad you mentioned pace also, because that was the number one thing that I wanted to talk about is the combination between pace is where it's at. It's going to be different for different people in different areas with different needs and different circumstances. But there are certain generalizations that we can make, certain things that are universal, and we can understand those. And then those, like you were saying, and then you can tweak or adjust those based on your situation. There's certain general points that you just have to be able to make and meet. For example, for myself, because of the experience I have, because I spent almost all my life growing up in the Southeast in the deep woods and in places like Florida and such, and the Appalachians. My experience is going to be that you've got two things. Normally there's like the big two. It's an oversimplification, but you want to fortify or do you want to have a bug out, right? And that's your, some people say, well, no, you just set up and you fortify and you just have your bug out plan. Other people say that's dumb. Your bug out should be your absolute primary. You shouldn't bother with fortification. Only give what you absolutely basic bare shelters and such. And then focus on primarily on being able to be mobile, having everything that you need, being something you can carry on a pack on your back. That's your life now. I think both of those are measures of extremes. I would find myself, because of my experience, somewhere in the middle, because I grew up on an Alabama river clay. I can take that and some sticks, and I can make a house in 2 days. So if I find a nice spot, it's isolated. I've been surveying the area, and I've found absolutely no human contact in the time I've been there. Well, all right, this is a good spot to set up base. But I'm still going to be ready at any given moment, any instant, to walk away from all of that and leave it there within 5 minutes time. Everything I need is going to be on me at all times. I use that as a primary example because your location is what's going to be important. A lot of the woodcraft that I know about would not, some of it will in general apply, with Skip, but there's not much I'm going to be able to tell him. If we're traveling together, I'm basically at his mercy on how to avoid the snakes and the scorpions from climbing in your boots and killing you at night and shit, So it's so dependent on environment. But because of my location, that's the point that I would make. Jeremiah said your brain, it doesn't cost you, it doesn't cost you anything. There's no extra additional weight. Think of it in weight, because you got to carry the shit, man. It doesn't cost you anything to learn skills. It doesn't cost you anything to know how to make concrete out of, the resources available to you that you can dig up with a sharp stick. And that's where the real goal is. You do want to be able to thrive. And that's why with river clay, you have the advantage of you build a structure with some sticks, put in some support beams, and then you set a fire inside of it, and it literally hardens itself like a kiln. There's your house. You guys have heard me go on and on about gasification, as well as when you have the river, when you have a river beside you, that's a lot of force. It's very easy to make a water pump that runs, fresh, cold water straight into your home and heat your house. But it's also something that you built in 24 hours with minimal resources. You can walk away from that and go 10 miles down the river and do it again. It costs you nothing to just walk away from that. And that's where I think the most important part, and the reason that would be important for me, is because I need to be able to analyze my changes in my situation daily and be able to adapt that. So on day 7, I'm doing great. Everything's been fantastic. I've been focusing on fortifying and building up and looking for places to start planting crops and such. But then on day 9, a bunch of guys, there's only me and say 2 other fighting form adults, but then a crew of 10 adults come by with bad intentions. I'm not going to hesitate to go. I'm going to immediately make myself scarce and scout and watch them and observe their behavior. If I get any idea that this group that's outnumbers me and is stronger than me has any kind of ill intentions at all, I'm not going to take any chances. I'm going to dip. And I haven't really lost anything. I lost a couple of days of labor, but I still have everything I need to function. I'm sorry for taking up so much time, but that was I think the greatest thing that I could contribute to the conversation as far as ways to prep. It's really dependent on your environment and being able to change as needed to changes in your environment.
May I be able to butt in a second?
Oh, of course.
I didn't get to introduce myself, and everybody was on, like, everything I wrote down in my notes was hit high points on the topics. So I'll just
Introduce yourself first, though.
Okay. My name's Jonathan Picone. I have a YouTube channel. I go over how to modify cheap surplus equipment, how to patrol through the woods, how to not be these airsoft Gyardo whiz-bang fanboys, and how I emphasize on taking cover and being more of a scout and watching people, because if you're trying to look cool, you're losing the whole point of being observed, where you're not taking cover or concealment. And I have a YouTube channel called a VK account called Appalachia Gorilla Shit. So it's on VK.
Oh, I like you.
Yeah, it's on VK, so you guys will like it. I'll put a link on it here shortly. All right, I'm going to go over 5 quick things I went over, and it's going to highlight a lot of the stuff you guys already said. And we can go into great detail on this all day, but I was just trying to think, what can the average person just write down right now to emphasize on what they might need? So mine was, and this is in no particular order of importance, it was sanitation, medical/prescription, equipment being ammo, firearms, binoculars, etc., water and food, and then you're going to want to have entertainment with books, hobbies, and you want the entertainment to have knowledge-based. So you want to have books on sanitation, books on medical, books on ammo, equipment, firearms, books on how to find water, and actually having a connection with the Creator, having a spiritual sense to be able to not only decipher genuine people, but people who have ill intentions. So actually developing some type of social skill, reading body posture and people's intentions, because when people get desperate, as we have discussed, or you guys have discussed, that's a skill or trait to have too. So yeah, those are some of the things I wanted to highlight. Sanitation is one of them, because all of us got to piss and shit eventually, and infection is one of the fucking biggest things out there. And the other thing is too is simple things like allergy medication, Tums for a heartburn, acid indigestion, freaking eye drops. Itchy, scratchy stuff for poison ivy, simple stuff that you would think you need at the grocery store that can turn into affection or just be a total annoyance where you can't focus on whatever your objective is. And the other thing I wanted to focus on with gear and equipment is means of carrying water and magnification, either on your weapon or binoculars, because the trick is keeping your distance, and it's nice to be able to see and observe. You really want to start focusing on being quiet through the wood line and being able to watch and observe from a distance what's going on, because that's probably one of the best skills to have is to blend in with the environment and keep your distance and watch and observe what's going on. So that was just some of the key points.
Oh, I think you saved the best for last. It's something I touched on briefly, but man, you were spot on. Everybody makes it off like you're going to be some bad. It's not like that in the woods. The badass is a guy that you're not even there. They never see you. If they're good people, they meet you. And if they're bad people, they never even know you're there. If you had to kill them, that means you fucked up and got caught.
Right. It's more and that's because of what the media has said to people, which is in a survival situation, you pick up these things. It's a video game, it's a movie. Every enemy is going to come at you one by one so that the camera can follow them. And they're all going to come at you obviously enough so that they can seem menacing on camera. Well, no, they're not. Everybody's going to be a threat. And the closest to that I've ever seen were 3 examples, like in the media. There was the Rambo movies, the new ones. There was the Bourne movies, and there was Hannah. All 3 of those were fantastic. And those aren't even really survival movies, because in survival movies, a lot of the time you're supposed to follow and care about the character, and if they showed what really happens, they wouldn't get viewership. So it's a good thing to remember that the media is the reason why these people think the way they do. They think survival is going to be epic and awesome, and then the YouTubers out there who make it seem epic and awesome, they don't help, because they have the blah 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 intros and they have the shiny text and they make it seem like you're going to be in your own action movie. Well, you're fucking not. You're going to get infected. You're going to carry hundreds of pounds of gear and then realize that that's not acceptable and have to downsize. So you lose a lot of that cool shit you just rated. You're going to realize really quick that all this shit is not fake.
I love that you always save the best stuff for the end. My favorite videos to watch about survival and prepping on YouTube are the ones the primitivists do, as dumb as that sounds. But it's because they're totally silent. They never speak. They just show you with physical action how to make and build and do the stuff. So you don't have to deal with all their crap. They also, it's just two guys out in the woods building stuff. No talking, just showing you how to do it. Those are about the only really good videos on YouTube because it just gives you the essential skills without all the personality projection.
Can I do my 5 now, guys?
Oh, yeah, we're saving the best for last. Oh, yeah.
Sweet. So, there's a few points that I'd like to make. Number 1, no plan survives enemy action unscathed. And when I'm talking enemy action, I'm talking the collapse itself. There is no plan you can make that will be foolproof. Something will go wrong. You need to be adaptable. It is not good enough to think that you can plan away every possible failure or even have redundancies for every failure, because many things will fail at once. They'll often do this, and they'll leave you in the lurch in the process. And there's no amount of preparation that can make you aware of what you don't know. And that's the main problem for everybody in life, now and during the collapse. And the second thing is everyone will be going through the stages of grief, because everybody will have to go through a paradigm shift. It is not going to be the happy world we live in now, full of entertainment and television shows and electricity and running water and the rest of it, if what the worst is to be believed, and all systems just basically shut down. And if that does happen, then everybody is going to go through the 5 stages of loss. And they start off usually with denial, where we basically say, no, we don't have to do this. This isn't happening. This isn't real. And very quickly, they have to come to terms with that fact that, yes, it is real, or they will break.
Or they'll just die.
That's what I mean. Some people will just die of shock, because that is basically the denial phase. It's the shock of it.
I mean, I was saying be killed, but yeah, that works. Yeah, that too.
No, that goes into the next stage, the anger. Most people are going to get fucking pissed. I mean, we will probably be going, fuck you, I was right, fuck you, I was right. But that's beside the point. It's everybody else is going to go absolutely crazy. They'll be so angry with everyone. Everybody
it would be
who
like the
lied
last
to them.
15 years of me being pissed off at the government and the world, from angsty teenager to current pissed off anarchist of today, all condensed into 5 seconds of watching your family be killed in front of you.
Bingo. And that is the point.
And you're going to lose your shit.
And then there's going to be the other side of it, guilt. A lot of people will feel guilt for the situation that they're in now, because even if it isn't their fault, they will internalize it, or they'll externalize it, one or the other. And the ones who internalize it will probably commit suicide because they've done something that helped create this circumstance of events, whereas the others will get angry and look for somebody to blame. And they will attack the nearest person to them, even if they care dearly about them. And I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally. And at the same time, that person will be dealing with the exact same problems. And this is the point. Everybody will be dealing with a massive tragedy. And we'll all try to bargain with it. That's the next stage. We all try to either pray away the problem, or we try to barter with reality in some way, shape, or form to make it go away.
Or we join some psycho cult leader like Negan because we're convinced we can rebuild it all of a sudden.
That's a form of bargaining. It's basically saying, if I give my responsibility over to this man, then I will be able to get what I had once before.
Exactly.
So one of my buddies has, and he's probably listening. He has a mantra that basically says, "The only way to prevent a Negan is to be a Negan."
To some extent,
well,
perhaps.
Well,
something
my
like
reply to
that
that would be,
Yeah, if something as bad as something like Negan situation happens, I'm gonna be the person in the woods shooting that motherfucker, and I'm gonna be
Hey,
so far away you won't even know where it came from, and you will not be able to send your gang after me.
that's right.
The way I look at it, a bullet may have your name on it, but a grenade just says to whom it may concern. There is no single set of weaponry that can guarantee you victory. This again ties into point number one. No plan survives enemy action unscathed.
Right. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to clarify something from earlier, being, your own Negan. The book is called The Foxfire Book: Hog Dressing, Log Cabin Building, Mountain Crafts and Foods, Planting by the Sign, Snake Lore, Hunting Tales, Faith, Healing, Moonshining, and Other Affairs of Plain Living, edited with an introduction by Elliot Wigington from Anchor Books. Is it that one?
Damn, son, you know more about that book than I do, and I'm the one that recommended it to you.
Yeah, I looked it up on Amazon as well. That looks like the right one.
Cool.
You can get it in
Right.
paperback, brand new, but the hardcovers, of course, you got to buy from third parties.
Yeah, well, you all can get it that way. Buy the book. Good.
There's one last stage, by the way, guys, that I haven't really gone over. I mean, this is the fourth major stage that we'll all have to go through before the fifth one, and that's despair. Everybody is going to be mourning the loss of what they had in some way, shape, or form. And they're going to be probably having to deal with more than just the loss of the paradigm, because let's be frank, if the shit hits the fan as bad as it can, people are going to die. It's inevitable. And I don't want to believe it'll get that bad, but it will get that bad if the shit really hits the fan anytime soon. It's going to get really nasty really quickly, and it ain't going to get better before it gets a lot worse. And people are going to basically be depressed over the situation significantly. A lot of things won't get done because there isn't much impetus for them to. Everybody's mourning what they had, and it'll take a good few months for people to start even beginning to realize that they need to get up off their ass and get back into the swing of things and start making the old systems work the way they used to. And in some places, it may be quicker than others because there may be people who've been waiting for this and are ready to take up the slack and are prepped and ready to basically take over the services that are necessary for society and make them work. Or there'll be people who abuse that position and basically charge an arm and a leg just so that your streets are clean. Or you can get your rubbish taken away. Because that's another thing people aren't going to be ready for is waste. We all basically create a lot of trash today, and that has to go somewhere. That has to be dealt with. If the state's gone, then the main provider of those services doesn't have his primary source of income. And there will be consequences for that. And that means that those companies will then have to seek either local authority or home authorities. These things will happen. But in other places where hang on, I'm not quite done with that. If in other places where it's more decentralized, the more decentralized an area is right now, the more likely it will survive with less scathing than an area that is heavily centralized. So take California, for example. It's quite heavily centralized in its governance. Even though there are loads of districts, each of them is very tight-knit. And they are probably some of the most susceptible to collapse as it stands. Whereas areas that are more distributed, more county focused, that have most of the relationships at the county level rather than at a state or regional level, and are dealing with specific, like, small areas of location. I mean, those sorts of people will have a better chance of servicing you after the collapse as well as before it. They will actually probably be the ones to survive this more likely than not with a minimum amount of damage. And you might find the worst thing is going to be for urban areas. Where in places like where I am in particular, we've got over here very little room to defend ourselves. So no offense, Skip, your solutions don't work for me. And this is, again, no plan works for everybody perfectly. Like you said, it's pick and mix and choose your own solution as best as you can. Because if you choose one now that doesn't work within the environment you're living in, you can't live in that environment. And
yeah, but you guys have you'll have unlicensed noise. All right, I'm going to stop. I'm so sorry. I was just saying because you are right. It is unfortunate that you're not going to have access to high capacity rounds for your rifles, but you'll have unlicensed knives. And it'll be lovely. I mean, you'll be able to cut your steak in one cut. It's assuming you don't boil the crap out of it first. I'm gonna quit giving you shit for living in England.
No, it's all right, man. It's all right.
Seriously, what would you do if shit collapsed in England? I would struggle here in America, and I have got the edge on people, and I'd struggle for a long time if I didn't find people like Finian and Skip to work with.
Well, be a blacksmith in Britain, but
blacksmithing is a good option.
Yeah.
Let me just say this though before this moves on too much, because I did want to just bring up the point that there would be much less waste to collect, because industrialization, if there was a collapse, would collapse too, and that's where the primary waste comes from, is the fact that everybody's got single-use bullshit.
Yeah. And people would probably lean more like the Amish, where they, as a general rule, burn all their trash. They clean up behind themselves. They have almost no waste whatsoever.
That's a possibility.
I'd like to add that what Lupinate's talking about basically reinforces the fact that, for example, if you're in an urban area, or it sounds like he's probably in a suburban area, if you're in a place like that,
but town.
Yeah, all that means is you just need to prepare more than the guy that is in the country already, that already has the garden, that already has a.
Oh, you mean like property. You don't have to run faster than the bear? You just have to run faster than the other guy. Is that what you mean?
You just have to be more defended than the other guy.
Right.
And that's the point.
Yep.
Yeah. If you've got better security around your property, if you've got more deterrence to any issue, even post-collapse, those deterrents still apply. Those contracts are still there. And they aren't going to magically go away. So unless there's some sort of get-out termination clause when everybody needs to fucking bug out at all of these different entities, you're still going to have windows. You're still going to have doors. Prepare yourself in that way as best as you can. Make sure that you buy...
Windows just keep honest people out.
Depends on the window. I mean, I
agree. A window can become a murder hole very easily if it's properly set up.
Yeah, and on top of that, some windows are insanely strong. I mean, I watched, as in my case, I got to watch firemen trying to batter open my house from the back with a club hammer through the window, and they broke the frame before they didn't even break the window. They broke the fucking frame. That's how they had to get the window out in the end. Even though it was basically part melted by that point around the frame, the window itself did survive that. Now, some of the others didn't, but they were basically far more cooked. But that one, 6 hits with a club hammer didn't even do a scratch to it. It broke what held it before it broke that. So as long as you've got very good fittings for your windows, which ours gave way eventually, but again, if you should be aware after hit 2 where the attack is coming from, and you can easily just open the damn thing and knock them off the fucking wall. It's that kind of principle where if you've got a house which can basically defend itself, your ability to defend it can be mitigated significantly. You just have to have the right accoutrement.
My dad said the 2 best ways to make sure that you are a healthy and prosperous merchant is to have something that everyone needs and be the one person that no one wants to try to take it from. So there's 2 sides to that. It's not just about forwarding up, right? It's also about, because people, what happens is you're on a list. Because I'm telling you, I've been in a desperate situation before where I've had to, face the temptation of compromising my principles. I won't go into, further detail in order to protect the innocent, but my point is that this is going to happen, and everyone's on a list at this point because you've got one job. But the way to get mitigated on that list appropriately is, well, the fact that you're well fortified in your home, that makes you go way, way up the list. You're way in the back end because there's so many other easier targets. But the other reason is, and I'm not speaking from like the perspective of like some warlord in waiting or some local gang stuff. I'm talking about the guy that he's just trying to feed his kids and keep his family safe just like you. But so number one is being fortified where he can't harm you is good, right? Because now it's daunting to do so. But also having something that guy needs. If you have something that he needs and you're willing to trade with him, I mean, if you wanted to be a dick, you could have him over the barrel. But the fact that you trade with him fairly and treat him well is going to put you so far down that list that he would never even think of betraying you. He would fight to defend you just because he knows that you're a mutual. It's in his mutual self-interest that you be safe and healthy. So you just fortified your house simply by having good diplomatic relations with your neighbors. And all you got to do is have something that they can't need and have what you need to make sure they can't take the shit from you. And you're in there.
Yeah. I would say that knowing your neighbors is something that is really foreign to most Americans today.
It's foreign to most people in the West, mate. It's not. Most people. I mean, I got to know my community only because of the fire. If I'm honest, I did not realize how good a community I actually lived in properly until that day.
And it's a mistake not to have that. To not have those neighbors to lean on. To hey, we saw a car pull in while you were gone. Wasn't sure if you had somebody. Oh yeah, no problem. I mean, that starts just simply with having their contact info.
I love that.
To where you can text each other. We've actually got to the point now where we actually have a group text for some neighbors, so that if you need to let all your neighbors know something at once, all you got to do is type it. That's actually helpful, especially because around me, I've got some retirees. I've got some military retirees, and quite frankly, they're not always home. Sometimes they're gone, and sometimes I'm gone. And so to have that overlapping, hey, we're going to be gone from this day to this day, and text it so that they can actually keep an eye on your house and check the door and stuff like that. That right there is a good start. But I can understand that only works now. But there's one thing that does, and if I can use this as a segue, it develops a real community. It develops a relationship with people that are going to come to your aid or that might need something from you. And rather than just show up willy-nilly, hey, we're here because the collapse is here and we heard that you're prepared because you park a Humvee in your front yard. Okay. And there's a side joke to that, and that's really for my crew that's listening. But the point is that people will come. I've had, just in the last year, I've had dozens of people say, hey, I'm coming to your house. And I don't know how I really want to answer that, other than the fact that I just tell them, well, first off, I might not be there, meaning I've already seen the shit hitting the fan and have bugged out, or B, good luck getting here because neighborhoods are going to lock their shit down and they're not going to let people drive through their neighborhoods, without some level of knowing who you are and why you're coming through. And quite frankly, I can honestly tell you that will happen. I can see that happening. But the other thing I was going to point, the other thing I was going to point to that might be really interesting for some of the people that you get to know, some of your neighbors, once you get to a point where you know them well enough that not only can you kind of not have to filter what you say, but you actually want to know more about them. You start to become friends with them. And I came across this game that's actually really helpful because it kind of lets people know where their moral compass is. And to me, that's more important. If you can follow the NAP, the non-aggression principle, and if you can enforce malum in se law, which is natural law, which means do no harm, if you can do those two things and you're willing to learn everything else, I'd rather have you than someone that flies off the handle, that can't be controlled, that is someone that you don't know exactly how they're going to react because in a non-stressful scenario, they're already fucking wigging out about shit. And so when things get bad, you kind of want to know where their moral compass lies. And that game is called Conflicted, the game. You can find it. You can find it. Yeah, you can find it at www.conflictedthegame.com. I got mine back in like 2013 or something like that. There's a couple different game packs, but quite frankly, you might not even get through the first deck because at some point you'll get so deep into things with your friends that they basically, you might go through 2 cards on one night. But basically it says, how far would you go to live another day without compromising your morals? Where do you and your friends draw the line between justice and mercy? If suddenly the government and infrastructure collapse, please let that happen. How would you survive? Who is the true leader among you and your friends? Conflicted will help you answer these questions and a lot more. Conflicted is a scenario-based card game which explores the survival instincts of the players. The goal is to live another day without losing what makes us all human. Now, the rules are really simple. Every scenario assumes the world has gone into chaos and that the apocalypse has taken place. I will tell you, the world's in chaos now. But they want you to shuffle the deck and place it in the center of the table. The first player reads a card, and each player at the table answers the card, and that's one round. And then the person with the best answer is awarded the card that they read by the person who asked the question. The game moves. Now it doesn't really matter, but basically the idea is, I mean, we vary the rules just based on how we want to get through the things. But I mean, I will tell you, you'll get to a point where you'll play this game, and you know what you'll do? You'll keep a legal pad next to you with a pen or a pencil, and you'll start taking notes. And those notes are important because what's happening is you're actually developing a pace plan. You don't know it, but believe it or not, that game can help you develop those types of thought processes that are going to be needed in order to make things happen.
I just want to play this game on Google Hangouts with a bunch of crazy ANCAPs, like right now. Like, soon as just shut the stream down. Let's just go make our own private channel. Let's play this game right now.
Fuck it. Don't make it private.
That would actually be pretty funny.
Don't make it private. Best stream ever.
Don't make it private. Just stream the damn thing.
Episodes, that would actually be a riot. But yeah.
Yeah, fuck it.
It doesn't work because people lie with their responses. So basically, the game, I have the game, and I've played it in a closed secret group of friends of mine, and it just doesn't work because people can say any damn thing they want. They can be horribly inconsistent and horribly unethical and be in that close group of yours. And you might not know it until you've realized that they've tried to scam you. The card game just doesn't
Kenny,
work.
but all of my friends are all of my friends are anarchists with Asperger's, man. So
remember that when you're doing these things, there's always caveat emptor. I'm not going to lie; it takes me months to years to vet people based on what level I want to trust that they'll be the person that I call when shit goes wrong. I mean, that takes time, years. In some cases, people that I have that are on my speed dial, I've known for 10 or 15 years. So
I knew my ex-wife for 6 years, and she lied and was a totally fake person for 8 years total.
Yeah, but
So
the answer
people can
lies
lie
in what
for a
title
long,
you
long
have for her.
time.
Yeah, but the answer lies in the title that you have for her. I get what you're saying. And what I would tell you is that, you know, then maybe that's part of the PACE plan. Maybe part of the PACE plan is that you have some level of plan for if, you know, Joe Blow freaking goes off the deep end and you can't trust him anymore, then what you do is you say, hey, you know what? This isn't working. We're not taking your shit. Here's your part, or your whatever you brought to the table is what you take with you. Okay? And if you have that level of agreement with people, and you know, if things get bad and it isn't a grid down scenario and things are just really, really bad and they just absolutely refuse. I'm thinking of the bar scene in season 2 of The Walking Dead, where they go and they get the old man that's sitting at the bar drinking. He was the vet. And these other guys show up and they're talking, and then all of a sudden they want to come out to their place, you know, and they're kind of making their way in. You know, hopefully there's a polite way to say no thank you. And
well,
I would much rather say no thank you and part ways than to have shit go sideways like it did for them.
Well, and like we were talking about, and prefacing this, I don't watch The Walking Dead, and I think it's massively overrated. So I'm gonna piss some people off who are watching this by saying that. But whatever, it's fucking corporate media. If you get pissed off at me for pissing on corporate media, you're at the wrong channel.
Horribly unrealistic.
But I will say that the idea of Negan is just an exaggerated version of all of the, you know, the proverbial players in The Walking Dead. I watched quite a few of the Negan episodes just because, you know, it was a story arc. All the people were like making reference to anarchy is just going to end up in Negan, blah blah, shove it up your ass. But ultimately, every one of the characters had something in common with Negan, which is why they were susceptible to his ways. So it's not necessarily that it takes another Negan to kill Negan, but it is that you have to be better than Negan and you have to beat him at his own game, which means that you have to know who he is. You have to get inside his head. It's like profiling a serial killer. And actually, I mean, it is profiling a serial killer, but whatever. My analogy is the real thing. But it's like profiling a serial killer because you have to look at why the serial killer believes that they're justified in doing what they do in order to know what the patterns that will emanate from that will be. It's not lucky breaks. It's not the aha moment, the epiphany where you just find that one clue that sinks everything in. It's the kind of things, if you're trying to catch a serial killer, that you look for related to their surroundings, the kinds of people that you're dealing with. You have to know the group mentality and who's manipulating who for the most undue and unilateral gain. And you have to watch these sorts of things happen in order to realize that, hey, you know what? My party is Negan, so let me put all their resources together to fight this motherfucker like they did in the end. So, I mean, like it's a matter of knowing enough about another person, no matter how sick and twisted that person is, and no matter how uncomfortable it makes you to try and get in their head, knowing enough about them that you can fuck them back if they decide to deep dick you. I like this line from a movie. I can't remember what it was from, but if you fuck me up the ass, you're gonna get shit on your dick, and I like the way that sounds.
The way I look at it,
hey, I bet you do. But no, but seriously, you did make a fantastic point. When you the only person that can beat Negan is if you beat Negan. I don't agree with that. You know, I'm not disagreeing with Skip. I'm disagreeing with some of Skip's friends. But no, why? If you've got a Negan, you need a Conan, and that's the point that Skip made earlier as well. Sure, you've got. It's not when you think of the term bad men. I don't mean bad as in a bad person. I mean bad in the Louis L'Amour sense, as in a bad man to be tangling with. You know, a dangerous man, not necessarily an evil person. You know, my dad's a nice guy.
What's the Jordan B. Peterson quote for that?
You said you just got to be better. You don't have to be evil, be Negan, or be evil. You just have to be better than Negan. You have to be able to get more done with less. You have to be able to show people what your worth and value is to them. You have to be able to encourage people that you can be trusted enough to lead them, that they can put their lives in your hand. And you have to be resourceful enough to be able to capitalize on every weakness and avoid every strength. That's the part that where I disagree with people. At that point, you've reached moral nihilism, and I just refuse to go down that route.
Right. Sure. Well, and Lupin was curious about the quote from Peterson. It's like grow teeth, but don't use them. And
it's different. It's different than that. It's a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control.
Right.
And that is what a good man is.
And he also makes the point that it's impossible to be good if you don't know what it is to be bad, because otherwise you just arrive there by accident. But and I like that. But the reason, by the way, just to go off on that for a moment, the reason that bad is associated with danger is because everybody has lied themselves into submission to a power that tells them that anybody who disrupts society is bad, is immoral. But realistically, the people who society considers bad right now are actually the people that are best for society, which is why whenever somebody wants to smear me in whatever way that they want, one or more ways, you know, Nazi, furry, communist, whatever they want to do, the autist is recent, cult leader, fucking guy with orbiters, I just accept it. And that's what you have to do. You have to do the thing that you think is right. Goddamn the torpedoes, no matter what the people want you to do.
Yeah, man, your haters, if nothing else, they are one, creative, and two, descriptive.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I wanted to add is being like bulky and strong and looking like you're a bad target to take is all well and good, but in my experience, nothing beats fucking crazy. Honestly, nobody.
Yes,
like
but you
what Skip said.
Something crazy. I know what you're saying, man. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm really before anyone considers the idea of pretending to be that falls into the loose cannon fallacy. That works fine if you want people to leave you absolutely the fuck alone. But the problem with that is crazy
what you may need to do.
Sure, maybe, but crazy. Here's the problem: you're still not going to get left alone because crazy attracts crazy, dude.
It does, and I would say that's not going to. That's not
eventually someone is going to be so concerned by your craziness that they're like, look, it's just a matter of time before this guy goes nuts and starts murdering people. I'm going to go kill him in his sleep. I don't care. I mean, that's an option. I'm not saying it's not an option, but it's not one I want to take.
That was a scenario in this game where there was a person who basically was offering to trade people in this specific type of scenario where this person was willing to trade ammunition or precious metals for a body part from corpses, and you need ammunition, and this person seems like they're a little off, but they look fairly harmless. And the question was, you know, not your own people, but some of these other bodies that just happen to be laying around because of different skirmishes that have occurred. Would you go in and provide these in trade with this person? I guess he's like a witch doctor or something like that. And it's a bizarre scenario, but let's face it, you know, there are so many things that happen today that I would not have said would be a possibility. I mean, all you got to do is read the news about a Florida man, and there's always some crazy ass shit that Florida people were doing.
And leave it to Florida.
And so
they really are total nut jobs.
As a Florida man, let me speak up here for a second. First of all, the thing is that when it comes to the news, they only put sensational stuff on there, and the crime rate in Florida has dropped consistently for the last 10 years. So the crime rate in Florida actually keeps going down. And part of the reason for that is because the gun ownership in the state of Florida has consistently gone up. And I believe right now the state of Florida has the highest gun ownership per capita than any other state in the union. So we have that going for us. But I got to dip out of here in a couple of minutes. So two things I just wanted to touch on before I go is, one, before anything goes down and society decides to go into the crapper, one thing about I mentioned earlier, and hopefully my internet doesn't cut out again, is that one thing that everyone should do is make sure that your immune system is strong. If your immune system right now is crap, then there's a good chance that you're eating crap. And I post a lot of stuff on Twitter about diet and proper nutrition and food. And you have to understand that if you're not mentally clear and your mind is clouded and your body isn't working properly, you are useless. Plain and simple. So if you don't have a strong immune system, then you need to build that up, because if things go to hell in a handbasket and you can't go to the corner drugstore, a CVS or a Walgreens to get your allergy medication, to get your inhaler, to get, your Tums and your whatever, then eventually that's going to run out and you're not going to last long. If you can't walk for more than 5 minutes without having to sit down because you're too fat, you're not going to last long. So you need to be physically strong and physically healthy. I'm not saying that you need to, like one of you guys had mentioned earlier, you don't need to look like, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You don't need to look like Conan as you're walking down the street, but you need to be healthy. And that's extremely important. And the other thing that I wanted to mention as well is that somebody else had mentioned, sanitation. Hygiene becomes incredibly important as well, because if you look at history, when handmaids, not handmaids, I'm sorry, what are they called? Midwives started washing their hands, the infant mortality rate was cut in half. So basic hygiene is incredibly important. So you need to know how to clean yourself properly when you have minimal resources, how to keep yourself clean in order to maintain proper health. And so these are two very important things that you need to make sure that you're capable of doing, is keeping yourself healthy, having a strong immune system, and being able to keep the things around you sanitary to the point so you're not going to get sick. Since I've been paleo, which has been just under 2 years at this point, I haven't been sick a single day. I haven't had a sore throat, a cough, a fever, or anything. And I work in an emergency room. I went through flu season, having people sneeze on me and cough on me and being in close quarters with people with the flu, and I didn't catch squat, because the food that I eat and my daily routine keeps a very strong immune system. And I would recommend that for everyone, to make sure that you're as healthy as you can be, because if things start to go south, then there's not going to be, the clinic that you're going to be able to walk into and be taken care of. You have to be able to understand how your body works and be able to take care of yourself.
You're a fountain of knowledge, Paleo, and thank you so much for coming and hanging out with all of us. Yeah, both of those things you mentioned, you can find number one in Firefox, because I'm going to talk about this book until you guys have to go. Fox, thank you. Firefox is slightly different. So it's imperative.
Of course, you can get Firefox for your digital prepping needs because it's compatible with Tor, so it's a very good browser. But
yeah,
also,
party
you
on.
can use Firefox to then read Foxfire.
There you go.
Yeah.
Use Firefox to read Foxfire without the feds knowing you're prepping. You got it, boss. So but the first thing is to keep in mind that that gives you many beneficial medicinal herbs that are found that help as probiotics with what they referred to as, in those times, for digestion, because they didn't really fully understand what probiotics were and immunoboosters and things that make your body work more efficiently. So that's number one, which is great. And number two, when he speaks of hygiene, just a public service announcement to all the people who aren't going to read the book, because some won't. Just if you're ever in that position, just find your creek and dig a little channel off to the side to make a little pool of water. And when the water starts running through it, take some ashes from your fire and just dump it right there in the stream, a good clump of it, and it makes like a filter. And you'll see that the water that goes through it is all filmy. And when you put your hand through it, you'll have like this coat of film on your hand. That's lye, okay? that is something that can be used to clean you. You can clean your equipment. It's not pleasant, but in a rough patch, that works. And also, you can very easily, just by finding a little, a can of beans, empty bean can, and some pine, and it's very easy to make your own astringents and your own antibacterial surface, basically. So yeah, that's a big deal for those to get an antiseptic. You can make all of that literally out of some dirt, some ashes from your fire, and some pine needles on the ground. Well, preferably pine needles off the tree. They're going to have what you need, not the ones on the ground. But you get my point. But yeah, those are both super valid, and of course, they're both covered in the book.
Can I clarify?
Real quick, before you do that, I just did want to say thank you for coming on, Paleo. In case you have to jet while people are talking, I didn't want you to like have me left out of your farewell here, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna bail, but thanks for having me. Yeah, go ahead.
And by the way, talk to Sarcasm. I forgot to do this, but I think Madness already did. Madness seemed to be interested in having a stream, maybe Wednesday, about communism versus capitalism. So I would be interested in being on that stream if and talking about it from sort of a semi-neutral perspective. Since I can't be fully neutral, since I'm a dirty capitalist, I would be discussing it from the perspective of understanding communism, but not being totally against the concept of anarcho-communism.
He's going to pull a Rick and Morty. You're both idiots, and I can prove it mathematically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mike is he's on Ginger Liberty on Twitter. He is heading up some of the Sarcasm and Liberty live streams. I believe he's going to be taking the Wednesday streams he's been doing the last few weeks. So
gotcha.
I'll let him know, and I'll let him know that you're interested. If you guys want to hear any more that I have to say, you can always check out the Sarcasm and Liberty live streams. You can follow me on Twitter at Paleo Libertarian. And that's it for me. I got to run, guys. But thanks once again for having me on, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, be well. Be well.
See you, mate. Be well.
Bye.
Can I just quickly caveat something? Because I think I may have been misunderstood a bit. When I said nothing beats fucking crazy, I kind of meant to negate fighting.
Yeah. Well, and I can understand that from that perspective. If it's a last ditch and you have to pull some shit with people who don't know you and know that you're bluffing, then it can be a very, very effective bluff. But you just don't want to develop a reputation as that, because then the real crazies are going to feel offended that you're, and this isn't a joke, the real crazies are going to feel offended that you're encroaching on their territory, and they're going to try and compete. So if you have to, and if the people do not know you, it is a very good defense. There are countless. If you want to talk a real good show that is less fantasy, Burn Notice is fucking fantastic, and he's done that many, many times where he was in a situation and he's just like, I thought this was the bathroom, but and then he starts fucking them up because he distracted them enough. So it is useful. But it's more of a last ditch, I would say, if that's what the point you were making was, then that works.
Kind of. I mean,
I have literally used that exact tactic when I've been pulled over and caught doing some bullshit when I'm in Metro. And never mind the fact I've been living in this metropolitan city for 4 or 5 years. But as soon as the cop pulls up and he's like, "Hey, buddy, what the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, shucks, officer, I don't know no better." And it has worked remarkably. They're like, "Oh, we got a country dumb on our hands. All right, just get the fuck out of here." That has actually worked very effectively for me with Road Pirates. I just Gomer piled it up, man. And I'm not proud to say it, but it's true, and it worked very well.
Just tell them that you just started wearing shoes and you're not used to them, so you couldn't control your brake and your gas pedal.
Well, I mean, it is true that I never wore shoes aside from church and walk. Yeah, that guy's awesome. Anyway, I never wore shoes except for church and Walmart until I was in high school, and that's not exactly a lie.
Yeah, well, and on that score, I don't know why you would be not proud of that. I mean, you like, I always like the two phrases. One I saw on a fucking industrial terrible, like, fucking angry band album cover, and I liked it. They're called Cut and Paste, if you ever just want to listen to something vicious. Cover has a fucking guy in a German military uniform with a drill through this chick's tits. It's awesome. But beyond that, the album's Kill 'Em All and Come Back Alive, and I like that. And I also like Improvise, Adapt, and Overcome. If you can thwart a road pirate by appealing to their senses rather than by fighting them, you've just avoided unnecessarily expending your resources, and that manipulation is something you should be proud of, because fuck these motherfuckers, and you just proved that there's an exploit.
What I'm going to give you a quick anecdote. One time I was just basically walking down the road and I was accosted by two basically teenagers who wanted my umbrella because it was raining. And I went from normal, mild-mannered civilian to absolute fucking crazy person. And they backed off extremely quickly and just wandered down. Again, this works really well on random encounter events. It
Sure,
won't
that
work
makes
well
sense.
with your neighbors, but
Okay,
it will
thank you
work
for
very
clarifying.
well with a random encounter. So this is the kind of thing that if people know what your limits are, they won't test them. And if they know better than to try to test you at all, they won't. And that's the main purpose of basically how you negotiate or how you navigate through life is you have a set of rules and you stick to them as best as you can. And in order for that to work, you have to make those rules rather flexible. They have to be able to handle as much as possible without breaking. And if you have to break them,
That makes
that's
a lot
when
more
you're,
sense.
yeah. This is how I've had to conceptualize reality, and it works pre and post collapse. It really does. If you've got that set of rules in your head, what you will categorically do and what you really don't care about, anything that you categorically would do or won't do, to be more precise, is your rule, and everything else is fair game. And you have to be able to accept everything else is fair game. That's the problem most people have, is they have so many rules that they adhere to because society, law, religion, you name it. There are shit tons of them that we all adhere to without even realizing it half the time. Mostly because of what our parents taught us, or because of what we've experienced in life, how we've gone through it, and who we deal with. We learn to accept those rules, and any of the others that we don't like, we throw them away. And we've done that very well as a society. Over the past 2,000 years, we have gone through quite a lot of different types of rule and quite a lot of different rules altogether, and lots of them have changed for the better, and some have changed for the worse. Because we've gone too far, we're trying to change the rules. And we've gone back full circle to the time when it was wrong to say certain things, like back in the 80s with the censorship movements over here. They're coming back, ladies and gentlemen, and they're coming back in force. It's just that it's the other side being the Puritans now. So we have to start learning what rules we're willing to accept and which ones we aren't. And the fewer you have, the more flexible you can be. And the simplest rule to remember is the NAP. Don't aggress. Don't start shit. It's as simple
I'm so
as
glad
that.
to hear you say that. I get so irritated with 17-year-old. I mean, I love them and I'm glad they're coming over, man. But I get irritated with these kids who confuse the non-aggression principle with the end all and be all. There's gonna be other rules, right? The difference is that is the universal rule. You have one universal rule. All the other rules are localized, because if the rules are localized, they can be voluntary. right? Instead of being centralized. I know we use centralized and decentralized, but I'm using this in reference to communities, right? If everybody in the neighborhood of, say, 2,000 or 5,000 or 7,000, if almost all of them have the same idea on whatever it may be, cultural norm, the slight minority that does not want to partake in that are going to have I mean, there's no NAP being violated, but it kind of sucks. You're surrounded by people who are into shit that you're not into and subscribe to shit that you don't subscribe to. You're going to move to the next town over that's more palatable to you, or you're going to start your own town. And so what you have are all these many different little municipalities. And that's what's going to happen. And different people we naturally gravitate towards the things that we like. Not always things that are like us. The majority of people do that, but it's going to go to things that we like. I don't like people that are like me. I already know everything that all my folks could teach me. I'm more interested in learning and cultural interaction. But that is an imperative, is that whatever it is you like, you're naturally going to gravitate towards that. The NAP is the perfect template, is what it is. It's a perfect ideal to aspire to, because it doesn't matter what you believe. If you have any reason within you as an ethical person, you can say it's wrong to hurt people. You know, that's something that we can all agree on.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I do know some people who wouldn't necessarily agree with that, simply because the world's full of stupid. But that's kind of part of the point, is you can't expect everybody to have the same set of rules. That's part of the rules of reality, is not everybody has the same rules. A lot of people share the same rules to an extent, but if you push them, you'll find out where they're really willing to bend. Everybody has a price. Everybody has something that they're willing to give. Everybody has a way of getting leverage over them. Even me. Sure. I'll admit it.
But more to your point, though, I think that I honestly believe, even now, in pre-collapse with an authoritative state that places all these laws, and this is coming from a limited American experience. Correct me if I'm wrong. I understand your government is much more oppressive, so it may have a stronger effect. But in America, cultural norms are actually more effective when it comes to enforcement than the laws themselves. Yes. Especially in the South. Man, in the South, the cultural the places where the cultural norms, and they're not common, you know, these guys, they love their blue lines and their flags and shit. But in the rare instance where the cultural norm runs contrary to the legal enforcement, it's catch me when you catch me. That's that. We're gonna do what we're gonna do regardless. It's almost ironic that the very people who, you know, we always talk shit about these folks that are too ignorant to realize that the thin blue line is the people that's going to come and take your guns. So when you have both of those hashtags on your Twitter, it's kind of silly of us who have thought it through. But these are the same people who are so distrustful of the federal government. They are so distrustful of any outside authority. And the reason that they stand for that thin blue line is because they don't realize that cops in Ohio are douchebags. And they don't realize that cops in New York and these other places where they're not at fucking brutalize people. They think of their local police still in the old terms, where the old police was like, you know, it was like Mayberry, you know what I mean? You got Andy Griffith over here as your local sheriff, and you love that guy, but then you got the dirty Fed or the ATF who wants to come and take your guns. So it's ironic, because these guys have the natural distrust and resistance against authority. And it's a perfect example where that's why the left has been very effective in some of the things that they've done. When I say the left, I'm not specifically referring to ANCOMs. I'm referring to commies as a whole, man. The left, those assholes.
The radical leftists.
Yeah, well, no, all of them, even the moderate left. They instituted. They're enjoying, they're reaping the benefits of it, of this idea of, well, we have to, since we see that the cultural norms are so strong that even the law doesn't deviate from it, then we simply have to erode the culture and erode the cultural norms. And that's what you've been seeing for the last 20 years. And it has been put into hyperdrive in the last 10 years simply because they thought they could fucking get away with it. Lo and behold,
Yeah.
lucky for us, a bunch of neckbeard nerds in their mom's basement got their video games fucked with, went ape shit, and now here we all are.
Yeah.
Right, well,
The
and let me
Which is a
Gamergate
good
really
thing. I'm
brought
referring to
this
Gamergate, and I'm
a head.
like, fuck yeah,
Gamergate
man.
brought this to a head big time.
Well,
I
it
didn't.
It
I wasn't
didn't, but it brought
following
it
it.
to
It really did bring
to a
it to a
very
head, though.
large presence on the internet.
Well, let me
Hmm.
be specific about something. Britain is not more tyrannical than the U.S.
No.
Let's be fucking. The U.S. is hugely more oppressive.
Mm.
Almost.
It's a lot easier to get caught doing stuff that's considered naughty in England than it is in
Yeah.
America.
Yes
That's-
and no.
I'm speaking in
but
practice,
but the consequences of breaking laws in the UK, you might get beaten by the bobby. Here, you get shot, your dog gets shot, your kids get grenades thrown at their face, and no accountability. Raids are done because of a plant with giant military vehicles. They have vehicles that they can blast sound with, and they do
God
it
forbid
regularly
you have
to
a
break
camera.
up protests. They'll take your camera out of your hand while you're trying to film, even though that's against Supreme Court decisions. They can make you a non-citizen for advocating revolution. They can take your entire property assets as civil asset forfeiture if they can even tangentially link you to a crime.
Yes.
And you won't-
I agree with
and you won't get it
everything
back.
I agree with everything you're saying, Jeremiah. The only point I'm making is, can it whoop my ass? Because if I'm in the UK, they're going to catch me, and if I'm here, they're not. I agree with everything
in
you
the
said,
US,
man.
they would just shoot you.
The
Well,
problem,
Okay,
Conan,
never mind.
Conan,
the
Conan,
point
one
is over
sec.
there somewhere. I'm just going to let it go. It's fine.
Conan, over here, you have to be doing a crime publicly for anything to be a problem. Crime still happens here. This is the thing. I mean, we've got a lot of it over here, apparently, if the media is anything to be believed. I mean, we've got apparently the highest violent crime rate we've got a higher violent crime rate than New York for the first time ever in London. And yet we have to police the internet, obviously. So, I mean, things like this are coming to a head. The empirical evidence is showing something ain't working. And the people are complaining, this ain't working. We're doing things this is wrong. And it's creating political movements in Britain to the point where UKIP has now got an entirely new raison d'etre. It's not even normal anymore what politics has become in Britain. It's becoming like America, a complete farce. And I am overjoyed that there are grassroots movements over here that actually seem to give a damn about things for once, because they know that things have gone wrong and it's up to everybody to actually make it better. And it's not up to us to do it collectively. It's up to us to do it individually in our own way as best as we can. If that means some of us get together in a political party, bully. If that means some of us just try and educate people on how to think instead of what to think, bully. I mean, every little bit helps. And there is a massive effort by everyone who is concerned about this shit. I mean, look at this. How many people joined this hangout to begin with? It was practically full when it first started. Everybody wants to contribute in some way to say, here's what you can do. Here are solutions. Here are ways that you can make yourself more robust as a person, as a family, as a community. And if you follow these solutions, if you take these actions, you will be at least somewhat prepared for any fallout that could occur from the madness that is going to be coming in the coming months. Now, personally, from my point of view, I'm seeing a bunch of really weird shit coming out of the US legal system, a bunch of huge instances that could completely crush a lot of big organizations overnight, kind of thing, if they were found guilty of some of the crimes that I've been seeing bandied around, like antitrust cartel laws and RICO lawsuits from the government on big tech and big media. This is the kind of thing that can break an entire 20-year plan quite easily. And I don't know what the fallout of that will be, if it'll be a strategic use of the Fed to completely destabilize the US economy, or if it'll be something far more violent. But either way, shit's going to hit the fan. There will be people will basically seek out advantages where they can get them if they think no penalty is going to befall them. Over here, that means communities have to band together to deal with anybody who tries to start shit. And neighborhood watchers do a lot to help unite communities together. They call you've got numbers for your neighbors, numbers for your neighbors' neighbors, and things like that. It's a good way of at least starting, just so you have a call network. Things like, what was that, Cell 411? Is that the app that basically lets you notify people where you are and what's going down? I mean, that's another good one. Having notification apps, having ways of basically alerting people that either, yes, you're okay, or you need support now.
Well, and that's the other part of it. You need a new communication grid when the collapse happens. So what Collapse was saying about, what Skip was saying about forming your own neighborhood watch, essentially your own neighborhood community of people that you can already talk to. That's crucial. That's important as fuck. So I would recommend doing that.
So case in point, right now, actually, while I'm sitting here talking to you, I've got like 4 or 5 radios, and they're ham radios. We have all of our bands already worked out in advance. We've got our frequencies that we basically plan on utilizing. We're working on pre-designated. We're working on, different POI, usage, where we are able to talk in the clear, but it's encrypted. And so the idea is to have different ways of communicating when cell phones don't work. Where I'm located, again, your results may vary or your mileage may vary, but where I'm at, all of the ham repeaters are solar powered. They're battery and solar powered, so they are not tied to the grid, which means that when cellular towers go down or is taken down on purpose, when the electric doesn't work, as long as you can maintain a charged radio, you still have communications with the people that you know you need to talk to. In addition, we opted for radios that we can program all the local characters that we know we may have to keep an eye on or see what's going on. And so we maintain that level of awareness. When you hear a bunch of sirens, you turn on your radio, you switch it to the fire department channel or to the local PD channel, and then you listen and see what's going on. Don't really need the news. I've actually been listening to the radio and heard friends pulled over. And I actually, because there for a while, they would actually, give their full name. And I don't know that they would mention the date of birth over the radio, but they would give the full name and then the license plate. And so I actually bumped into a buddy of mine at work and I was like, "Oh, so you got pulled over this morning, huh?" And he's like, "What the fuck? How did you know?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I heard it on the radio." And so, that's one of those things where it's helpful to know what is going on. And it's also good to have pre-coordinated communications where you already know what channels you're going to use and things like that. So I actually have a software that I'm sitting here working on right now while we're talking, and it's called Chirp. It's a Python-based software that most ham folks use. And you basically go in and you program all the frequencies that you want to be able to either monitor or be able to communicate on, or a combination of those two. And so what we did for my close-knit group is we all went and bought the same radios. And I have the software, and so I'm basically setting up everybody's radios the same so that we all know what channels we can talk to each other on, and everything is already programmed in. So that's just a small thing that you can do in advance that does not involve relying on a system that will fail. Remember that 2 is 1, 1 is none. Do we use the radio every day when we talk to each other? No. Comms checks are not a bad idea, but ultimately we use what's most practical, which is what we're using right now. I'm sitting here with a set of earbuds plugged into a cell phone. And so I'm sitting here talking to you that way. But at the end of the day, those networks go down. You've got to have alternate forms of communication. And a buddy of mine, we were actually testing out Morse code via infrared, between each other to see if we would actually be able to see each other using night vision. And it works, and that's helpful. So that right there is an alternate form of comms. And so you want to have different layers of that. You want to have predetermined routes. You want to have predetermined locations where you'll meet if certain scenarios occur. Down here, we had a wildfire, and not anything like California's wildfires. But what I will tell you is that this wildfire was started in Mexico, and it made its way into Arizona very quickly. It moved faster than some people could get out of the way. And, some people were like, oh, no, it's way up on the other side of the mountain. We'll be fine. And the next morning, their houses are filled with smoke. And they got fire department kicking on the door saying, get out, get out, get out. And so they're leaving. They didn't know. They didn't see it coming. They weren't really situationally aware to what happened. And the only way to do that is to have that support system of multiple people to be able to reach out to to each other. And they have to be people you trust. And, if I can reiterate that as many times as I possibly can, as much as I like to pride myself in my survival skills, I can't do everything all at the same time, 24/7 with no sleep, 7, 10 days, 4 months straight. It's just not possible. And I will tell you, that's going to wear a person down really fast. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to get killed. And so ultimately, you can't be a loner. If you're going to dig a hole and you're going to crawl in and you're going to poop in the same hole that you live in, and you're going to have all your food in there and you don't need to come out of your hole, then don't come out. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have cramps about the first couple 100 yards after being in there for 3 or 4 months. You're going to have no leg strength, and you're going to get eaten. And that's what's going to happen. And so, I can't stress enough. You got to have a group. You need other people, and then you need to train. All the book smarts won't help you, but book smarts are important. What you really need to do is you need to have a support group that will encourage you or challenge you in one way or another, just like I'm challenging everybody on this podcast and anybody who's listening on YouTube. You got skills that you've learned, or you read here, or you read there, or you've got this book that you pulled off the internet. Go out and test it. Find out if it's full of shit. And I'm not talking about building bombs and anarchist cookbook. I'm talking about literally doing things that require survival. Because there's a reason why the anarchist cookbook was written by a one-armed man. I don't know if I would really. I don't know if I would really want to put everything that he wrote into that book in practice when he's missing several fingers or part of his hand. And
and let me be real specific. I think a line really nicely sums it up, and it's a line from Fight Club. How do you how much do you really know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? It's mostly like plunge yourself in, try to find some way to get outside your comfort zone and stay outside of it for long enough to learn something. And
if you think about it, that's exercise. Exercise is the same way. You know, if your muscles are in a constant state of relaxation and you're not putting them under stress, then you're never actually going to grow. You know, your muscles don't build themselves under a nice, easy, relaxed afternoon chilling by the pool. And not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because I do that periodically. But at the end of the day, you know, it's the constant challenging. You know, one of the things that keeps me on Twitter is, quite frankly, because there are still people out there who need their beliefs challenged. And I like to go out there and I like to challenge them a little bit. If I realize
in the South, we call it sacred cow tipping.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the most sacred cows make the best burgers.
Yeah, but and that's like the okay. So two sort of reflections off that point. The first one is, Joe Rogan, fantastic podcast, most popular in the world, except maybe InfoWars now. Joe Rogan's podcast, he regularly shits all over fake martial artists because what they're doing looks really, really fun in the studio, and it looks awesome when their partner is going with all of it. But a lot of these people, they get into these situations where they've gotten really full of themselves because they know how to work very specific things in very specific situations. And they don't know how to play human chess, and they don't know how to anticipate moves. They don't know what a telegraph is because they've only ever been in the studio and sparring and bullshit. They've never actually been in a fight and used it applicably. So he always laughs at these people, and it's for a fucking reason. When you start to look at these things in more practical terms, you start to recognize that old dude who seems like he knows what he's talking about until he starts poking pressure points to try and get the other person to submit is just a joke. And it doesn't matter how much authority somebody seems to have, if they can't apply it well, don't listen to them. And then there's that other point, which I go through every day because I exercise for 1 to 3 hours, sometimes 4 a day, to try and get my body in government killing shape. And it hurts. It isn't a pleasant experience until you get used to it.
For everyone listening, he means voluntary dissolution of the government. He didn't mean that literally. Just for everyone listening right now.
Oh, you know, I don't know. Fuck them, but whatever. Yeah.
Just remember, Jeremiah, Google is watching you.
Yeah, well, Google's gonna watch me. I don't they're listening to me with my phone. They know what I talk about offline, but either way.
Don't be evil, Jeremiah.
Just remember the caveat that basically states, you know, hypothetically, for the purposes of anyone that's researching for a novel.
Right, right. Well,
now you're covered.
I lost all my revolutionism in a boating accident. It was truly tragic. But let me just so my point is that when you find that wall, it's because you went looking for it. And when you find that wall, you can find ways over, around, and through it. And if you don't find that wall, it's because you weren't looking hard enough. And if you do find that wall, there's always a wall past it, but at least you're further. And that's what I tell people, like, because I occasionally show people the ropes of how to physically train themselves. I've got a group of 4 or 5 people that I regularly physically train, and I train them all in a group and show them proper form and proper, like, how to move past shit, because that's what people don't get. They don't get that it's a matter of moving past it in your mind. It's a matter of realizing that the wall that you think is there isn't there. And the reality of it is that most of the collapse scenario is going to be mentally prepping in the mind frame of finding the walls and moving past them. Because if you don't, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to fail. And I am not going to fucking lose. I have the Chaos Emeralds and I'm going to fuck these people up.
You mentioned Fight Club. There's a line in Fight Club that said, or at least in the Dust Brothers song that was done for it, you have to realize that someday you will die. Until you know that, you are useless. And it's the understanding of mortality that actually drives us to do more with our lives than just be. It's what drives us to give us meaning, because if we lived eternal, then, well, we can take our time. We don't have to act. But if we're temporal, if we're limited on this world, then in order to have any meaning whatsoever to our lives, we have to do things. And that'll still be true post-collapse. There will still be things that need doing, and there will still be people who will want to do them. And there'll be things that people don't want to do that need doing as well, but like, who said life was ever easy? But that's kind of the point. I want people to remember as well that even though it is going to happen, we will recover from it. It is something that, in financial collapse at least, people will find a way past it, find a new paradigm to use. Now, when it comes to something more brutal, like a global war or something, I'm not in the mind that that will be as likely, simply because I don't see it as being as inevitable as maybe some of you do. But at the same time, I still think the financial one's just as likely to cause violence. So in either situation, you're dealing with the same problem.
Hey, Luke.
It gets back to the warrior ethos stuff. And I've written about this on Steemit too. I mean, it's what you're saying, and it's more. Like, basically, I've always said, and I believe it to the core, like, individual liberty to me is worth literally any price. And when I say that and write it, I mean any price, as in like the life of myself and the lives of my loved ones. And that's the warrior ethos. Like, basically, you mentioned like other things, but a good example is Lieutenant Spears or whatever from Band of Brothers, when he's talking to the coward in the foxhole, and he's basically telling him that your objective, the hurdle, the obstacle that you have in life is that you don't realize that you're already dead, and that you need to operate as if you are already dead. And it's basically it's the same thing I was saying in reverse. Everything that I believe in that's worth following and furthering in life is worth dying for. And if you haven't figured out those things yet, then you're still wandering around and you have no idea what you're doing, and your purpose sucks. You need to figure out what is actually worth dying for, and you go out there and train and prepare to do that. And when you do that, good people, moral people that do that, then the world around us becomes better, and you make it a better world for the people that live after you. And that's the kinds of things that people should be preparing for, because when hard times come, those are the types of people that you want around you. Those are the friends that you want in your community. And this gets back to earlier, too. People were talking about ethical tests and using games like Conflicted card games and stuff to figure out people's beliefs. You can't really do that, and it's a difficult problem to crack, to solve, because really you can't tell who somebody is and what their morals are unless they're put under pressure. And you can't, ethically put them under pressure yourself without that being unethical in and of itself. So really, it's very difficult to find people that you can surround yourself with as your friends. And this is the reason why I've told people, like, if you surround yourself with people that have the exact same lifelong goals as you, then it allows you to have better physical security and personal security, because those people should at least be consistent, and they will die and fight for the exact same things you will. That's the type of people I want to surround myself with in advance of any collapse or disaster, because everybody has to sleep. I mean, we all have to rest, and I have children. So when I go to sleep, am I going to trust somebody like Jeremiah to protect my children while I'm sleeping and myself? And yes, I would. It's the same way with Lupinate. I know that you guys are my friends, and I don't have a problem with that. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to all, as individuals, figure out in advance, because it is that important. Because you can't do it after something bad's happened, because those people will not be trusted. So yeah, absolutely. Build your network in advance and make sure you're doing it in a wise way so that those people can be counted upon when things get really bad.
Oh, and another, like a sort of addendum to that, have people your network doesn't know that you can also rely on, so that those people are contingency plans in case you definitely need something, but definitely don't want consequences to blow back on them. Have that guy you know, or like countless numbers of that guy you know, so that in the situation where you might need something done that your network might not approve of, but that preserves your network, you can keep it going. Because that's like, it's all contingency plans.
Sure. I mean, like, it's not a bad idea to have a dude that knows how to run the wood chipper.
Yeah.
Not that we're advocating anything of that nature,
somebody call my name?
obviously.
One of my friends will be a pig farmer, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
See,
what you're saying, all of you, I think you're really saying the same thing that I was saying initially. You know, and it's certainly, I'm not saying that the only way to find people is to start playing the game conflicted. I am telling you, it is a fun way to spend a Friday evening, is to, you know, pour a couple jars of bourbon and sit around a table and play that. But I will tell you that
and by the way, it builds neurons. That's the thing. If you start thinking in these terms, that's good anyway, even if it ultimately like lacks practical application in 90% of the instances. At least your brain is thinking in those terms.
That's right. Well, as far as an intellectual,
long enough, you'll see people's inconsistencies too. So yeah, absolutely. Playing it with them, eventually they can slip up and say something.
You might be able to get them to see theirs too.
Some people, I mean, you know, are there people that can pass the Minnesota multiple personality disorder test with flying colors, and then you start to wonder later, like, what's going on here? Sure. I'm not saying that everything is going to line up perfectly, but my point is that is a method. There's plenty of other methods to vet some people, to try to figure some things out. But honestly, it's actually kind of interesting because it's a good team building, activity. Another one, quite frankly, is to go take a carbine course together, all of you. Like, get your group of friends, go sign up for a carbine course. If it takes 2 or 3 or 4 months to get ready, and I'm here to tell you that sometimes it does. You know, there's dudes that don't have the right optic for whatever the courses you're taking. You'll see dudes show up to courses like this where they don't have a sling on their carbine. And you're like, what the fuck, dude? How are you going to do transition drills without a what's a transition drill? So that's the level of detail that you've got to go through. You know, I mean, I've got buddies that, you know, I built them holsters in the anticipation of getting them training. And now that we're training, now we're starting to work on the next level. Everything is always building on the next thing. Everything is always getting more complex, more complicated. You know, the idea is to always be moving forward. That's what progress is. But you'll never get there if you just say, well, you know, this shit's hard. I don't think I'm going to do that. And I'm not saying that the gentlemen, any of you gentlemen on the podcast are in that category. But what I am telling you is that there are people I know, because
you got to be aware.
I run into them all the time on Twitter where they're like, well, you know, I mean, they've been listening to me for 2 fucking years on Twitter talk about a collapse. And finally they're like, okay, the shit looks like it's getting real. All I can afford I need a pistol. What pistol do I go get? And I'm like, dude, where the fuck have you been? I've been talking about this shit for 2 years. You know, like, I mean, seriously, get a clue. But but seriously, all I would tell you is that there are people that their mindset is merely they don't need to prepare. They're just going to take from other people. And that is a lot of people out there that think that way. And then there are other people.
Well, yeah, because there are a lot of people out there who are very good at that sort of skill. Like, I mean, you guys need to. I need to stress this to you.
Road
that
pirates do it
this
for
is
a
not.
living.
I'm trying to tell you, and here's the thing: there are so many cats out here right now that say, "Well, I'm just going to go do this particular thing." But, like, for example, a drug dealer or whatever, or just a guy working, but he knows in the back of his mind, man, if it was just me in the world, oh God, they can't help but just think about how big of a piece they can be able to take out of it and how much they get out of it. That's what runs through their mind. And there's going to be a very, very significant number of these individuals. However, the market does provide, because this is a problem that affects everyone, and it is an absolute primary problem. These people don't actually produce anything. They just take from others. They are not symbiotic. They are parasitic. And so this creates a parasite. Well, anytime you have a problem that's going to affect you to that degree and affects everyone unilaterally, that's a great situation for a roughneck fella like myself, or a seasoned fella like Skip. I'm sure Skip would say, no, I would be there's nothing that makes me, I say hero for hire because mercenary sounds bad. But a fella like me, support your local gunslinger, comes into effect really fast. As corny and cliche as that all sounds, it really happened. And in that situation, something that devastating, that's going to be a need that outweighs, honestly, as dumb as it sounds, it outweighs food, water, armor. Who cares about all that awesome stuff you got if someone can come kill you and take it? You can't take it with you. So that creates a need.
Real quick to what you were saying about the mentality of people taking stuff, Collapse, and
you go ahead.
Yeah, well, the thing is, man, I do research on engineering of mental engineering that video games and movies use as a psychological operation, and it's kind of a motif that it's almost like a premonition to a degree. And if you notice, what's like the biggest first-person shooter video game that's out right now that's online? And it would probably be Fortnite or PUBG, right? What is
honestly, I wouldn't know because I don't do those things.
I don't play video games.
Train on the,
but look what the mindset is for that game, right? Go in a random place, have no plan, take stuff, shoot people, take their ammo. It's all about the taker survivalist mindset.
That is social engineering. That is social engineering.
Right, and I could go into some detail here because I am a gamer and I play pretty regularly. And here are 5 components of that. The first component is it doesn't matter if you fucking die, because you can just start over again, and that creates a mindset in these people of, I'm awesome because I'm doing right. I'm awesome because I'm doing all this. Well, how many times have you died in this game? Did it log that? Because I want to see those few hundred numbers and then point them out and tell you that you should have used a different strategy. Like, I play Watch Dogs because I have a controller now. Thanks, Finn. I play Watch Dogs a lot recently, and I do it in a way that annoyed the first person that I played Watch Dogs with. And I play it that way because it's more like a sim that way. And the way that I play it is stealth. You play by using cover. You play by using as much of the surrounding environment as possible. You play by minimal deaths and mostly sneaking kills. And you do it that way because, remember, you're one dude. You do not have a squad. You're one dude. And if you start to think of it that way and start to think, well, what would I do if I couldn't respawn? It is so much better an experience of a game because you feel badass when you complete the level on the first try with no deaths. And that's the way I've liked to play games since I got hooked on Splinter Cell. And I know that this is all a severe deviation from my normal fucking Sonic jokes, but even those have some element of stealth to it in the fact that you watch all your corners and you watch them well enough to not be trapped. But the second aspect of it is the absurd amount that you can carry in these video games. Even in Watch Dogs, I can carry, I'm currently carrying 9 submachine guns, 7 pistols, 2 frag grenades, 4 IEDs, 3 comms jamming devices, 1 device to disable helicopters, I think, a cell phone, 4 shotguns, and a sniper rifle under a trench coat.
So just for a second, if I may, I don't know if there's anybody else on this podcast that has done this, but I have traveled approximately 20, 22, 23 miles with approximately 75 to 85 pounds, including about 1.5 gallons of water. Rifle.
Been there, done that.
And this is cross country, long range land navigation there at Camp McCall, right outside of Camp McCall in the National Forest. And what I'm telling you is that 85 pounds was one fucking rifle with one combat load of ammunition.
And it was on your back, visible. It wasn't under a trench coat.
Right.
Well,
yeah. And what I'm telling you is that a lot of this shit is unrealistic. And when you find out what's realistic is when you go train with it.
Right.
When you go train and you're on the firing line with only 4 loaded magazines of rifle and 3 loaded magazines of pistol at any given time, when you're doing several different drills and different transition drills, and you're not wearing an 85-pound rucksack, and you're not running from somebody who's actively shooting at you, okay? What I would say is that when you do that and you realize how fucking exhausted you are after a 2 or a 3 or a 4-day class, that is realism. Like,
right.
Do that first. Before you start to
let me make a few responses. The 3 responses I'll make, 4 responses, I guess, and I'll try to make them quick since we are dwindling time here. One of those responses is another point in games where it doesn't matter how tactically aware you are because you can just eat bullets. You can't do that in the real world, and you'll get paralyzed by one hitting your spine, or you'll get a gasping, sucking chest wounds that you'll need to apply maggots to later if you get one in your chest. And if you get one in your head, like I've seen so many games where somebody can just take like 40 rounds to the face, and as long as they sit behind cover for 4 seconds, they're fine. That's not how it is. And additionally, it's not about score in real life, and it's not about numbers. Those little like 0 weight objects, those don't exist in real life. You can't carry unlimited bullets, and you can't just go sell unlimited bullets. It doesn't work like that. And that's the other thing. You can't just sell whatever you want to whoever you want. There's markets, and you have to know people, and that's why you have to have a squad so that you can have logistics people. And that's the 5th point about video games, is that they're not fucking real. You have no skin in the games, so don't act like a badass just because you're good at them. That's the other part of it. Like, if you can use it as a simulation, fine. But if you use it as a simulation and don't learn from it, that's the other, like, that's the bad part of a simulation. And anybody who's ever tried to be a pilot will tell you that, especially a pilot for the Air Force, where they put you through these dramatic sims to make sure that you don't fuck up a plane that they spent billions on. But then right. So and then the final point there is I've never done it with many weapons because I live in California and this place sucks. But what I have done is I've trekked through the desert with 70 pounds on, and let me tell you, it was like a religious experience coming back to civilization. And I
mean
hated,
walking through purgatory.
Yeah. Well, and especially since, like, I think it was around 91 degrees there at the time, and it was very unpleasant. And I did it for about, 14 hours. And I never want to do it again, but I know that I'm going to have to. So regularly, what I'll do, and you can just search this on Twitter, you can search @insanity is free, one word, and you'll find a bunch of things where I'm saying heat test complete, where you can see my steps while I've with the temperature corresponding thing, where I've walked a significant period or distance with some amount of weight. And I do that as part of my workouts because if I don't get to move to beautiful Oregon with Kona, and if that doesn't start working out, I need to be able to survive in this place, and this place fucking sucks. So my other point is that if you want to go into the most extreme, harshest possible environments near you, the ones that you would be forced to escape into once civilization collapsed, and if you can't figure out how to work there, you haven't worked hard enough.
This gets back to the trust issue, and Collapse was talking about this earlier. He was talking about taking a rifle training course with people in your community or your team, basically. There is no better example of trust and what it means to trust somebody than to be in such a scenario with people that have rifles with live ammunition in them. Because literally your life's on the line. When I wear body armor, when I take a training course, I wear it because I'm worried about the person next to me. I'm not worried about shooting myself. I'm worried about the idiot next to me shooting me. And the definition of trust is having somebody standing behind you or beside you that has a rifle that can easily kill you in a single bullet, and they are in control of that rifle and you're not. That is the type of stuff that people need to be doing in advance of something bad happening, because the person next to you needs to be completely trusted. And by that, I mean like they're holding a rifle and they're shooting it over your shoulder while they hold, they've got one hand on you while they're shooting it, and they're maneuvering behind you and they're flanking, and that kind of stuff cannot be learned in a video game. Video games do basic stuff like, move cover to cover, and when you don't do that in a video game, you're going to pay a heavy price for it. But nothing compares to actually being out there with the people that you need to trust and wearing 50 pounds of body armor. I actually have AR-500 metal plates and soft body armor in my plate carriers, and that shit is not light. And
it's
I will
heavy as fuck.
Yeah, and I will stand in front of the computer I'm standing in front of now on a manual treadmill, and I will walk on purpose with that body armor on me with my rifle in my hand as an exercise. And I've actually seen Jonathan, I've watched one of his videos where he's hauling ass, running back and forth between two separate ranges. And each range that he runs back and forth from, he has to pick up either a rifle or use his pistol. And he went back and forth like an insane amount of time, like 8 or 10 times. It was ridiculous. That's the kind of experience and exercise and the experience that you need with a weapon that's going to help you in something that's coming in the future. That's the kind of training.
So what you're saying is got to go fast.
Well,
no,
okay,
it's training under stress.
It is. It's stress. It's training under stress. But the other thing I was going to say, and we started to veer off into something different, but today's generation and the young generation, and Jeremiah, this is like you or younger. I hear it all the time from my sons, this whole YOLO bullshit. and I tell them, I'm like, that mentality will get you fucking killed. You will die. And if anybody out there who's like 18, 19, 20, and they're listening to this and they're like, yeah, man, collapse is going to be YOLO. Yes, that's exactly it. I won't fucking see you. You won't make it long enough. You won't be there.
I love the fact,
and the reason
I can't contain it anymore. You gotta let me tell you, because that right there, all the good important stuff I had, man. You gotta know.
Let me finish this. Let me finish this though, real quick. All right. So and Conan, I love you, but just let me finish this real quick. And what that means is, going back, I did the Bataan Death March 4 times. Okay, and I'll tell you that is a challenge, and that's not a whole lot of weight, but you're in some really ugly fucking terrain. But you know what I had the opportunity to do? I had the opportunity to sit down with Bataan survivors and talk to them about what it was like to watch their friends get bayoneted by Japanese because they weren't holding up the procession, because they were being forced. It was a forced march. And the Japanese were using bayonets, those long-ass bayonets, because they didn't have enough ammunition to keep control of the number of personnel that they had captured without using the bayonets instead. And you know what one of the survivors said? He said, the youngest of us were the first to perish. And the reason they were the first to perish is because they had less to live for. Now think about that for a second. And what that means is that as you get older and a little bit more mature, and you start looking at what's really important in life, maybe you've got family, or you have a family, you have a wife, you have children, or stuff like that. That's what keeps you going. But for some of these younger kids that might be listening, they've got to be able to dig a little bit deeper than fucking YOLO.
Right.
Conan,
well, just on that subject, what I will say is that the people that don't have much to live for, those are the people idolized in the media, because the media is run by people who idolize youth. But in a post-collapse scenario, you're going to have to find something to live for, even if you lost everything. And part of that mental prepping thing is prepping for losing everything and still being resilient enough to find ways to carry on. But go ahead, Conan.
Okay, so the first thing is, and again, I'm sorry to interrupt, Skip. I think I was on the verge of having an eruption. You guys made so many good points. The first one is one that honestly take a point of pride. Something my kid said a few years ago. Showed her something ridiculous, basically just some excessive risk of life for the sake of, a cheap thrill or whatever. Not knocking it, but I just showed it to my kid to see the reaction. And she was mortified. And she's like, that's stupid. There's so many things in this world that could kill you. Why would you intentionally put yourself in a high-risk situation? That's dumb. So I was like, ooh, that's very good. That's promising. And granted, this is the same kid that did a backflip off of a tree, lost her grip, and broke her arm. So don't take it too heavily. She's still susceptible to. But the point was, she was mortified by it. And I made a joke. And, I was like, oh, YOLO, And her reply was, yeah, Dad, you only die once, too. And I was really impressed with that she had this grasp that some mistakes are permanent. And it applies, it reinforces, it gains some confidence. I was so proud of my kid when I heard her say that, because it's a very sage thing to say. All the other kids are saying, you only live once, YOLO. And she's like, well, you only die once, too. So exercise with caution. The other thing was, and this touches on everything that you guys have been talking about for the last 45 minutes. And it's, I never stopped talking about stuff my dad told me, because I didn't realize he knew what he was talking about till I was 25. But something he told me once was, son, you need to be able to plan and prepare and have everything that you need, have every tool available that you would need to prepare for a problem. But you also need to be taught and know how and be prepared to deal with any situation without having any of the tools that you know how to use. Now that's kind of wordy, and I'm sure he probably said it better than I'm saying it. But his point was that, like what Skip said, and Lupin and Jeremiah all touched on, you need to obviously plan and reinforce and fortify yourself against the inevitable issues that you know are liable to come. But being able, the fact that my dad and access to the internet and in recent years has taught me how to have access to things that most people listening to this show would not be able to have without modern power tools or even hand tools. I can use stone and dried wood, and I can have what we would consider modern conveniences. Just being able to know, having the knowledge of what's around you, it doesn't matter how much you have or how fortified you are or how cool your bug out bag is. You need to be trained to be able to survive, because you got overrun so fast and you got hit so hard, you barely made it out with your ass and your underwear, much less your bug out bag, right? You need to be able to do that. You need to be physically capable. And of course, you guys touched on so many other important points, psychological health and well-being. That's when you say YOLO, even those of us who, like you say, we need something to live for, essentially, because without having something to live for, you're not going to get past despair, which is one of the stages of grief that Lupin had discussed. You won't get past despair if you don't have something to live for. And like Jeremiah said, if you lose everything you have to live for, you got to have something else to live for, even if it's something so shallow as, these sons of bitches took my entire family from me, so I'm going to die. I'm not going to die until I make these sons of bitches pay. Shallow as that is, and as pointless of an existence as it may be, it is a motivation that makes you get up in the morning. It makes you eat. It makes you keep yourself safe instead of just sitting in a place knowing you're about to get into a firefight. That's what you need. And based on the whole YOLO idea, So yeah, that's what I got. You guys are awesome. But these were the points that I wanted to make. Being able to survive on nothing gives you the ability to appreciate those things that you do have and that you can do. Also, if you're just a regular guy in a town, the best thing you can do is get some do-it-yourself videos on YouTube, and just at the house, start doing home projects. Just I don't care if you just diddle stuff and then sell it or give it away for whatever. Build stuff. Use hand tools. Use power tools. Learn how to use tools and how to build things, because the amount of help that can give you, I mean, I can't even explain to you in a post-collapse situation. Just know, even if you don't have those tools available, you have the skills to build those things. You know what has to be done to build those things to begin with. There's no point. You can find a whole utility truck full of awesome tools, but you're a monkey with a shotgun if you don't understand things like basic framing and forming and things of that nature.
This gets back to the trust issue too, and I'd like to bring up the video gaming thing. Idiots get people killed, basically. In the chat, people are talking about this.
Yep.
Basically, there's a simple thing it's PUBG is the game I'm talking about. And if there are a couple people in the squad that have suppressors, people like to call them silencers, but there's no such thing. There's still a report when that weapon fires, but it's way quieter than a normal weapon. If you have some people that have those suppressors and some people that don't, the people that have them have better be the ones that initiate contact with the enemy. If you're an idiot and you fire your rifle or your weapon without a suppressor, then you've just endangered your entire squad and you've given your position away. Something simple like that in real life would easily get a lot of people killed. And it's a basic training thing. And you don't have to go to a training class to understand stuff like that. So there is some viability to playing video games with people and learning some basic stuff like that. Just something to think about.
This is kind of why I like Destiny as well, just to go onto the gaming thing, because I've always played as the class that's the squishiest with the lowest level of recovery possible, because A, it does make it a bit more challenging, and B, it makes it feel more realistic. I don't really want to recover health. I want to avoid the bullets as much as possible and take the enemy out from a distance with usually a scout.
Right, and that was, and by the way, I wasn't saying that video games can't be useful. The only thing I was saying is that if you don't use them as training tools and you treat them like a simulation, you're wasting your time, literally. And some people are fine with wasting their time. I'm not.
I use them for what I consider them to be, which are basically advanced pattern recognition tools. People's acumen to pick up patterns does actually increase if you play enough video games, because especially ones where it's against a computer, because computers work on algorithms, and algorithms are just advanced patterns. And if you can work out what the pattern of events or the sequence of actions that you need to do are, you can complete the game. However, again, this is another reason why I like Destiny. A lot of the time, if you don't work out what those solutions are, you get kicked out of the entire event, and you then have to do it all over again. So it's all about that level of difficulty. If you like the challenge, then you try the challenging thing. If you don't like the challenge, then you go for something easier, and you don't play hardcore.
And so just to say this, we're pretty much at the time when we're going to need to stop. But we have a question in chat for night vision with effective battery power. So does anybody here have a good recommendation?
It depends on, you should ask the question if it's mil-spec or civilian and what gen. I know that sounds like a lot of questions to ask, but those
it's the exact questions somebody should ask. So yeah, Jack, you can answer that.
I would
also presume civilian.
Well, civilian's fine in the US at least. You want something that is passive, and by passive I mean no infrared lamp or some other obviously detectable device.
You want
by
a
other
filter,
people.
not a light.
Yeah, you want a high as high a quality that you can afford light collector or thermal imaging system that also at the same time does not give your position away. And as I replied in chat, we could spend an entire hangout just talking about force multipliers, and that's what thermal and night vision's all about.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I would say
right. But next, by the way, just to get this out there for the people that might bail because they hear it's dwindling down. Next Sunday is going to be me trying to get as many libertarians or people with practical non-government solutions to security in the form of like policing and neighborhood protection. I'm going to try and talk to people who used to be police and now aren't, like Rayford Davis. I'm going to talk to people like Dale Brown of Viper's Threat Management for coming to come in, and I'm going to see if I can get as many of these sorts of people in here as possible, people with military training, etc., to try and figure out the best ways to do this sort of thing without government. But go ahead, though. He's a civilian.
Right. So I was going to say that you can still buy, that whole mil spec versus civilian. That really doesn't matter because, I mean, unless you're willing to pony up about $25,000 or $30,000 for a set of PVS 14 Gen 5s, you're probably better off to try to get like a PVS 14 Gen 3. I don't know that Gen 4 is worth the additional cost. Sometimes you can upgrade a Gen 3 to a Gen 4 at a relatively reasonable cost when you can afford it. But the only reason why I don't have PVS 14s is because they're so expensive, but they're also worth it. And I would tell you that there's plenty of night vision on the market. There's ATN. There's a whole bunch of companies out there that are turning out all kinds of stuff. There are some people who prefer a weapons mounted night vision. There are people who prefer a night vision scope, which is night vision and a scope in the same body. There are people who prefer night vision that detaches or flips out of the way, which is traditionally where a PVS 14 would drop in behind like an EOTech or an aim point, like a Comp M. That is traditionally a military setup just simply because it's pretty proven. My recommendation, if you get night vision that takes AA batteries. Get night vision that will accept rechargeable AA batteries. If you do that, that's a leg up just in the fact that it will work as long as you can maintain AA batteries or solar charge AA batteries or have access to AA batteries. There for a while, I was packing them in my freezer. I would go in and I would hit Costco and I would buy those gargantuan packs of AA's and I would stick them in the freezer. That's maybe a little bit of mythical folklore, but it was supposed to prevent the batteries from expiring before you would use them. So
no, keeping the cool makes them last longer. Yep.
That works for some, but what I would say is just by and large, try to find a common battery system like I was talking about last episode. Try to get a common battery system, AA, AAA, the rechargeable CR123s, the rechargeable 18650s is a really good place to start. Also, if you are using night vision, probably something that you can either attach to a weapon or detach from the weapon and wear either mounted on a Kevlar, like I have an ACH that I cut the ears off so that I could use amplified hearing protection. But that has a mount on the front that you can actually attach a PVS 14 or something along those lines I'm just a big fan of the PVS 14 because I like to be able to look in one eye, but close that one real quick and look at the ambient light and make sure that I am not putting myself in a spot where somebody that doesn't have night vision can see me when I can't see them, because that is a distinct possibility. If you move into an area where there's light or you move into moonlight, sometimes you can't distinguish moonlight from non-moonlight when you're using night vision. The other thing I would say about a PVS 14 that I like is that it doesn't use infrared unless you turn on infrared. The other thing I like is that my cameras that I have all the way around the house, they're all infrared. So when I turn on my night vision and I look out, it's like floodlights that people can't see.
Yeah, of course, I'm a physical security expert, and one of the things I recommend for people for their residential security is multiple layers of cameras. And like what you just alluded to, you should have a passive, non-obvious system, and that's the infrared cameras. And anybody other than high-level operators, they're not even going to see those cameras being run. But you should also have regular cameras that are high-quality color cameras. And what I will warn people and caution them against is that all these high-quality and high-expense toys like thermal and night vision, they can all be negated by highly illuminating your property. So if somebody, I believe, a high-tech enemy of mine is coming onto my property, I am going to illuminate the fuck out of my property, and it makes all of their shit obsolete. They might have the best night vision and the best thermal systems in the world, and if I'm throwing up enough flares and I have enough lights that are illuminating them, all of that stuff is immediately obsolete. That's just something to keep in mind. So all of these multipliers, the main help that they give you is when you're on the offensive. But if you've planned your defense properly, all of these devices do not help the attackers that are coming against you, because you're going to have lighting, and that evens the playing field. So all those people with those fancy toys, you're going to be able to see them and shoot them just as easily as they can shoot you.
Right.
Yes.
And let me just get to some of these other comments, because I think we could get like really in depth on optics specifically. Vash Lancet, who I've been on a stream with them on the Mad Libertarians channel, says, "What's up? Leaving a like." So thank you, Vash. Joel Brock says, "Get out and train, get it done." Definitely. Fucking Garlic, Gary LK Woodland says, "This is great. I'm glad we're friends." Same. I'm glad to have been able to spread this to as many people today as I did. This was very successful. And I don't expect people to accept my values. This is from R. Tanamal. As long as they treat others well and treat me with respect, we can be friends. It goes both ways as far as a shift, but more so on the left, they're attacking libertarians now. Sure, I would argue, though, that the right is attacking them, too. They just think they can make allies because Trump's in office. So that's why I resist that. And there are plenty of other comments here, but a few of them aren't very, like, a lot of them are more relevant to things that happened earlier in the conversation. So Rebel Scum says, "My hierarchy of prepping: fitness, health over skills over gear." So you keep, I guess what he's saying is you keep your body in shape, and then past that you learn how to use your body, and then past that you learn how to modify your body, which makes sense. Seems like a very good hierarchy.
Although let me make a comment, and that is that during a marathon is the wrong time to learn that it's a combat biathlon.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and nobody's bulletproof.
Right. Even though, shout out to Dave Asprey, Bulletproof CEO, follows me on Twitter. Even though Bulletproof is a great diet and lifestyle, it's not going to save you when you're being shot at. But yeah, I think we had a relatively productive stream. We're going to go into detail on non-government security, both post-collapse and post-peaceful transition, or how to transition peacefully to begin with. And I'd invite anybody who liked this stream to do that as well. I kept on posting my Patreon link in the chat here, and I didn't get any bites. But if you do appreciate what we're doing here, and if you appreciate what I'm doing to promote this, please consider giving my Patreon at least $1 a month, because that if every one of my followers everywhere gave $1 a month, I'd be making well over six figures. All I need is like the average person to just throw whatever they can at it. And I want people who are currently here to, before we hang up, tell people where they can be found and who they, and generally what their profile is about, so that people who are interested in them can find out more about them on these off hours. Fucking, that was a really long and drawn out way of saying it, but fucking, I'm also multitasking right now.
So this is Skip, and you can find me at The Free Rifleman, and you can also find me at Collapsitarian 1. That's kind of my backup shadow ban version. I think I have 2 shadow ban accounts that I use as a backup, which is probably a violation of the Twitter agreement. And then the other thing I would say is that, the best way to be prepared is to just live it every fucking day. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, I would close up tonight by saying that the trust issue is the most important thing. Like, you need to surround yourself by people that you can go to sleep at night and not worry that your throat is going to be cut as the last thing that you remember. And your family and your children will be safe around those people. It sounds like tinfoil hat type stuff, but that really is the type of people that you need to be surrounding yourself with right now. Those are the people that are going to protect you and keep you safe when times get really bad. And I still believe strongly that that is exactly what's coming. And a lot of people are going to die. And your pets, unfortunately, are going to become the food of your neighbors if you don't protect them. Your livestock will be killed and removed. And we need to prepare for the worst. I'm still hoping for the best, but I'm hoping that those types of things don't happen, but I think that they are going to happen. And for that reason, I'm going to keep my family safe. So,
and just to reflect off that point, by the way, first off, this is a channel run by a pessimist, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, I think everything anybody here could picture, I could picture something worse. But and then the other point, and then the other point is that if you're going to try and protect your brain from mind controlling electron waves, definitely don't use tinfoil hats. It's a dome. It's made of a conductive metal, and you're looking to get those waves bounced around in your skull. What you want is a Faraday cage, and more succinctly, what you want is something that you can deploy quickly. So everybody buy a Faraday bag on Amazon.
My worst case scenario is my family being all dead. And in chat tonight, I've talked about this. Like, I plan to bug in. I fully expect and want people around me to prepare to bug in. Your house should be your sanctuary. It should be your castle. You do not want to be in the scenario where you have to leave your home and be on your own. And I tell you, if my family is dead, I'm going scalping. By that, I mean I'm going to kill as many enemies as I can before I die. And,
I hope that that's your ethos anyway, because these people need to die. These people need to burn for what they've done to this planet. They are terrible, and they're odious, and they don't deserve anything they have, much less the breath that's in their lungs.
Agreed. Yep. So yeah, if anybody wants to follow me, I'm on Steemit as the same name as this hangout, and my business account on Twitter just for local news. I know they shadow ban people and they're doing ridiculous bullshit these days, but that account is Liberty Pro PI, and you can look me up on MeWe and Minds as well. Thanks all. It was a great discussion. Have a good night.
Fantastic stuff. I did want to say, I'm sorry, brother.
It's all right, mate. Gotta log off in a sec anyway. I'm Lupinate. You can find me on Minds and Discord as Lupinate, or on Steemit as Anarchic Wolf. And I think this was actually quite a good one today, guys. So thanks again. And I think I'm gonna have to duck out now. If I'm honest, I'm about ready to fall asleep.
Good night, friend.
Good night, guys.
All right. Hope you can recover from your loss and be well. See you in about what'd that be? Fucking 14 hours, something like that.
Roughly,
Bad morning
yeah.
news, everybody. Hashtag bad morning news. Find us on everywhere.
Yes.
Yep, 11 Eastern Standard Time tomorrow.
12, I think, tomorrow, but only for the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's because it's a weird transition period for me trying to move out.
Take care.
Anyway, be well.
Cheers. Be well, guys.
You want me to go next?
Anybody, I don't. It's
all right.
Free form.
All right. You guys can check my channel out on YouTube. It's just Jonathan Piccone, JONATHAN and I go over modifications of gear, how not to waste your money to get the job done with equipment, and got a lot of firearms knowledge on there, and it kind of pertains to the conspiracy realm with the firearms industry. So it might trigger somebody, but somebody's got to do it, so it's me. And then I got a VK account. It's Appalachia Guerrilla Shit is my VK account. So you guys want to check that out too. And yeah, that's all I got.
Sic Semper Tyrannius. Why is your icon a beat up queen? I love it, but just checking.
Why not?
Most anarchist answer to anything ever. So I guess that's my cue. I'll go next. Thank you guys so much for having me. I guess I agree with everyone else. This has been just a badass stream, man. So much good information. A lot of cool stuff got batted around back and forth. One thing I would like to say to those of us who do not and reasonably are not going to be able to afford night vision optics, but appreciate the value of having superior visibility, especially in a defense situation, I'd just like to point out you can salvage some black garbage bags and some 1x2s and 2x4s, and you can build a black room in about 2.5 to 3 hours if you've got 4 men, and you can have your night watch go sit in there in the black room for the last hour of sunset before they start their shift, and you're going to have a poor man's night vision. You underestimate this, but anyone who doubts me, I strongly recommend that you go experiment it for yourself. Wear one of those sleeper shades for a full hour in total darkness, and then open your eyes and go outside and look at what you can see. I mean absolutely zero light exposure, like as if you were growing cannabis plants in your flowering stage. I'm talking no light, brother. And then you walk outside in the dead of night, no moon, just maybe some stars if you're lucky. And the heightened amount of awareness you will gain, it's amazing. You wouldn't even, it'll stun you. You'll be impressed with yourself. You will be like, I never knew I could see this well in the dark. That very simple method of creating a black room using the last hour of sunset for your night watch to basically immerse themselves in darkness before they go out into the night to perform their job is going to enhance their vision drastically. As I said, it is a poor man's version of night vision, but it is so very effective, and it doesn't cost $20,000 a head. So
and
keep
also,
that in mind for those of us who aren't going to buy those.
And also, if for some reason you're ever stripped of your gear, you now have a way to deal with the situations and still see in the dark better than otherwise. So it's good to have the practical knowledge anyway.
Oh, by the way, I texted my dad and asked him because I knew that I was getting the quote wrong earlier. And this goes back to what it was saying because of the night vision. He says the trick to it is to have every tool you need for your plans and plan to not have any tools that you need. And that's an example of a poor man's night vision, simply by blacking your eyes out the last hour of sunset. So that if you're going to be either keeping yourself safe from bad guys at night because you're a night watch, or simply you're going to go coon hunting. This is something that will be very, very effective navigating through the night, so you don't step in a gopher hole and snap your leg in the middle of nowhere, and the nearest person that knows or cares about you is 5 miles away. You know what I'm saying? So very, very effective. That's what I mean by just having just bare stone and clay knowledge of what you're capable of doing. I encourage anybody to try that out, even if it's just for a fun activity, just so you can open your eyes. The night will look totally different to you. It's crazy. It's not even black anymore. It's this weird dark blue, and it's kind of trippy.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I've definitely done that myself. And if you spend basically you do no lights whatsoever near you for about 20 or 30 minutes, and you can see an awful lot in the night that you did not at first think you could.
But you didn't say
Most
who you
importantly,
were,
movement.
so by all means, let people know where they can find you. And by the way, you keep pronouncing your Twitter name, but not really spelling it. So do that, because not everybody knows where Opelika is.
Ah, yeah, that is true. Some people might confuse it for Opelika. Now, I'm Opelika Creek. All you got to do is hit that @ button. O P is a paw, ELIKA CREEK. Opelika Creek. If you don't know how to spell it, Google it. It'll autocorrect for you. And yes, by all means, come watch me trash dumbass status online and, defeat fallacies while I periodically share fun ways that you can live your life. Sans State.
Does that take care of it? Did you go, Skip?
I did.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I think the last person that we would be talking about here is Michael. And are you still here, Michael?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, cool.
I haven't said anything today.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Yeah, pretty much. By the time I got in, everybody had pretty well covered everything I wanted to talk about, so I didn't really have any new, unique insights to share. But
well, hey, if you know any cops or ex-cops who are dissatisfied with the way that policing works and have better frameworks for it, by all means, bring them in.
I unfortunately don't know any of them. Or fortunately, I guess it could be one way of looking at it too. So can't help you with that one, I'm afraid, my friend.
Gotcha. Well, anyway, where can you be found?
I can be found on Twitter under my main user account would be Not a Spy, NOT_A_SPI. Play off of my last name since it's actually pronounced Spies.
Oh, I always thought it was Spies.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the more German pronunciation, but we've anglicized it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I know you, man. I know you. You're a fucking smart ass. I like you. You're all right. I think I've been following you for a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, follow him. You can find him at not_A_SPIES. Is that what it was?
SPI.
Oh, yeah. And what were you going to say?
I was going to say you can also find me still on Twitter at Stateless Cook, also on Steemit there, where I will actually be discussing in greater detail some of the food procuring methods that we covered very briefly here today.
Very cool.
Foraging, gardening, hunting, all that kind of stuff. Procuring your own food for yourself and your family without a state influence.
Well, you should definitely get on a stream with Bolder Than You, that being you, the letter U, at some point soon to discuss paleo life and promote your channel.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's right now. It's a lot of reading because I need to build up some of my knowledge base first.
Well, then you could pick his brains too.
Yeah.
Because paleo is the way to go if you want post-collapse food. Also keto, because keto is primarily fats, and you'll find a lot of that everywhere.
Yep, exactly.
So,
but yeah, so that's where I can be found. Oh, I can also be found on Minds at Not a Spy as well. Same
Gotcha.
spelling as the Twitter username.
Cool. What were we going to say, Finian?
Oh, he mentioned Steemit. What's your account on Steemit?
You're already following me, Finian.
Okay, just making sure. Thanks.
All right. Well, I think that fairly well concludes it. If y'all appreciated it, consider the Patreon thing. Smash the state, fuck the system, and most importantly, improve yourself, because you only have your meat suit in the end.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for having us.